Chapter 766. Someone search the manor from top to bottom, and see who isn't in the manor right now. The Crown Prince's eyes darkened deeply. Arbor could sense the Crown Prince's fury bursting forth, and she scratched his palm with her small hand to pacify him. As far as her eyes could see, a large patch of withered crops was lying askew in the field. She didn't know that before today, the yellow stalks in this field had been growing brilliantly, and it was almost time for harvest. Grief welled up in Lin Yongyi's heart, and he couldn't resist kneeling in the field and bawling his eyes out. It's over, it's over, it's over, everything is over. The yellow stalks that he had spent so much time and effort on, enough to feed all of Bailon City's citizens, were destroyed by someone just like that. Your Highness, Your Highness! Xiao Yi hastily returned with another youth, and reported through gritted teeth. Your Highness, it's Feng Manyun. Feng Manyun and her maid Xiangqin have both disappeared. Prince Emo was startled. He simply didn't remember this person called Feng Manyun. Your Highness, it's that Celestial Medicine Valley's physician Feng who disturbed the Crown Princess's secluded cultivation when you ordered her not to stay in the city lord's estate a few days ago. Seeing that his master clearly didn't remember, Hui Feng quickly reminded him. It's her. Recalling Feng Manyun's coquettish and pretentious gaze of adoration, Prince Emo felt his stomach churn incessantly. Physician Feng? Lin Yongyi, who was sitting on a piece of barren land, suddenly jumped up and bellowed furiously. Physician Feng did it? Where is she? Where is she right now? Vicious woman! Look at what she's done. Why have all the yellow stalks in this field withered to death? Did she use some kind of vicious medicine to poison the entire land to the point that it became a wasteland? Ah, my yellow stalks! Lin Yongyi sprawled on the withered ground, gripping a handful of black soil as tears streamed down his face in dejection. Lin Yongyi was regretting his actions to death right now. If he hadn't felt some sympathy for Physician Feng back then, he wouldn't have ended up in this situation today. That day, when he received the Crown Prince's order to chase Feng Manyun out of the city lord's estate, he couldn't bear to let her wander the streets, so he secretly dispatched her to the manor. Who would have thought that he had nurtured a tiger that would bite him back? Lin Yongyi slapped himself in the face. At this moment, he was filled with regret, but he was powerless to reverse the situation. As expected, he was not a person who could accomplish great things. If he had received the Crown Prince's order and chased this poisonous woman out of the manor, who cared if she died or not? Then how could he have ruined such a good harvest today? Ah! Lin Yongyi pounded the ground and cried bitterly. Arbor's eyebrows moved slightly. Based on my conjecture, she must have ground the edelweiss into powder and scattered it into the well. She must have done something to the drinking water of the manor. This vicious woman! Old Man's son spat angrily. How many wells do you have here? Take me there, Arbor suddenly said. This person is narrow-minded and vicious. I reckon he still has some tricks up his sleeve. Arbor's lips curled up slightly. Lin Yongyi raised his hand to give himself another huge slap before scrambling to the Crown Prince. He wailed miserably. Your Highness, it's this humble official's fault. This humble official is slow-witted. All right. Stop wailing and howling here. Go see if Hong Yaowei's abdominal pain has recovered yet. If it has, then have him immediately bring people down to the ground. If they can't recover the yellow stalks, we will have their heads. Emo Lien declared gravely. Lin Yongyi promptly crawled to the manor's forecourt, looking for Hong Yaowei with reddened eyes. Chapter 767. Crown Princess, please follow this old man. Meanwhile, Old Man's son led the way at the front, bringing the Crown Princess, the Crown Prince, and the others to one of the wells. Old Man's son ordered a sturdy man to fetch a bucket of well water and bring it to Arbor. When Arbor picked up the water ladle, Emo Lien reached over and rolled up her loose sleeves slightly. Arbor scooped up a ladle of water and sniffed it before casually sprinkling a pinch of medicinal powder in it. After a light sizzle, the water inside the ladle instantly turned a thick black color, and a foul odor wafted out, causing everyone to retreat a few steps. Arbor shook her sleeves and sprinkled some more medicinal powder in, dispelling the foul odor in the water. She then turned to Old Man's son and said, Quickly inform everyone in the manor that they can't drink water for the time being. Jojo, Is the powder of the tinder grass in this well water the one you mentioned? Emolien asked gravely. No, it's highly toxic. Arbor's expression also turned grave, and she said coldly with a smirk. Feng Mannion probably poisoned it again before she left. This water has been laced with a type of highly toxic poison that can cause a person to bleed from their 7 orifices and die an unnatural death with just a single mouthful. Old Man's son jumped in fright, and he hastily instructed those 2 fearful sturdy lads to bring this news to everyone in the manor in the forecourt. Isn't Celestial Medicine Valley a place to treat illnesses and save people? The poison that it has developed is different from the usual. I will need about 7 to 8 minutes to dispel the poison water here. Other than this well water, are there other wells? Yes. There's another one behind it. There's another one, which is a channel specially used to irrigate farmland. The vicious woman wouldn't have also done something to that, right? It's very possible. Old Man's son's eyes bulged and he couldn't resist cursing. This vicious woman. She's simply deranged. All right, you don't need to accompany me here. After I'm done detoxifying the poison in the well, I'll gather all of you. After Arbor finished speaking, he winked at Emolien. Actually, why would she need 15 minutes to detoxify the poison? While speaking, she had already restored the well water to its original state. After Old Man's son and the others left, she took Emolien's hand and walked towards another well behind them. Emolien, I wonder if this bit of sacred soil of mine, combined with the sacred water's effects, can restore your yellow pole field? Xiaomu took out a small cloth and unraveled it, revealing a pinch of soil inside. After exchanging glances with Xiaomu, Emolien immediately revealed a smile. Quickly try it. Let's go. The 2 of them first went to detoxify the other well, then walked towards the channel beside the ridge. Meanwhile, giddy up. Xiang Qin held the reins as she drove the carriage. She lowered her head to look at her hand, which was slightly red and swollen from being scratched by the reins. She then turned her head to look into the carriage. Mississippi, we're about to leave the city. Feng Mannion had wrapped herself in the quilt, and her hands and feet twitched from time to time. She scolded with a crooked mouth. Hurry. Quickly leave the city. Xiang Qin sighed and quickly whipped the horse, driving the carriage out of Bailon City. As soon as they left the city, they naturally arrived at a messy shanty town. Normally, Feng Mannion would still be patient enough to greet these people, but right now, she wasn't in the mood at all. Especially when she recalled how she had been forced to grovel in front of that little bitch several days ago, under everyone's watchful eyes. Her face was filthy and her whole body was humiliated. It was as if her heart had been scalded by fire, and it couldn't help but burn. Chapter 769. The assistant manager was naturally overjoyed that Feng Mannion suddenly changed her mind and wanted to see the patient, so he didn't fuss over her rude and unreasonable attitude anymore. Mississippi Xiang Qin was the clearest about her Mrs.'s current state. Her mind was also a bit muddled from the stimulation she received a few days ago, and she still hadn't recovered yet. How could she still have the energy to see some patient? Feng Mannion arched her back as she got down from the carriage. The corners of her mouth and the tips of her eyes twitched unharmoniously, and she walked towards the tent in front of her with an aggressive and unreasonable expression. Underneath her sleeve was a slender silver needle dipped in poison. These lowly commoners actually dared to question her medical skills again and again. These lowly bastards should just die. Fine, weren't they questioning her? Weren't they thinking that her medical skills were inferior and couldn't treat people? Fine then. She would thoroughly kill that lowly commoner today, and just let him die. Kill him. A voice kept nagging at Feng Mannion in her mind. Feng Mannion's eyes and mouth were all crooked as she walked forward with her neck stretched out, looking like she was neurotic. Swish! Feng Mannion forcefully lifted the curtain in front of her, and the silver needle in her hand flashed under the sunlight. Roar! An enormous mouth that grinned all the way to his ears abruptly appeared in front of her. Before she could react, that person had already pounced at her and hugged her body with astonishing strength. The other party's iron-like hand clamped down on her left arm and bit down on it, chewing the flesh raw. Feng Manyan was in so much pain that she trembled all over. Miss! Xiangqin let out a heart-wrenching shriek. The young married woman also shrieked. Hubby! Hey, don't go over! Don't go over! The assistant manager reacted quickly and grabbed Xiangqin and the young woman. He took a few steps back and shouted, Someone come quickly! Someone has mutated! Someone has mutated! Ah! Let go, let go, let go! Feng Manyan only felt that the other party had bitten off a chunk of flesh from her arm, and she was so frightened that she shuddered all over. The sturdy man howled at her small face, and with a crack, he actually broke Feng Manyan's left arm. Ah, my hand, ah! Save me! Save me! Xiangqin, Xiangqin! In the midst of Feng Manyan's panic, the silver needles in her hand had long fallen off somewhere. Miss! Miss! Xiangqin was eager to protect her master. She threw away the assistant manager's hand and casually picked up a wooden stick. With a loud shout, she smashed it towards the strong man's back. Let go of Miss! Let go of Miss! Ah! The brawny man let out a roar that sounded like a human, but not a human. He suddenly turned his head and stared fiercely at Xiangqin with his bulging eyes. Plop! After suddenly losing the brawny man's grip, Feng Manyan clutched the wound on her left arm and collapsed to the ground with a plop. The stench of urine wafted from her body. Xiangqin hugged the rod and trembled like a sieve. She stared at the bulging eyes of the burly man and swallowed her saliva. Her forehead was covered in sweat, as if she had just been fished up from a river. It was still the assistant manager who saw the opportunity and kicked Xiangqin over, just in time to avoid the claw that the brawny man had pounced at her. The tent district's guards had already rushed over after hearing the news. Several dozen guards donned battle helmets and were fully armed with sabers, swords, and clubs as they surrounded this mutated brawny man at the edge of the tent. Chapter 770. How was this possible? How was this possible? This person clearly didn't die, so why did he suddenly mutate? He was still fine earlier. Feng Manyan, who was sitting paralyzed on the ground, subconsciously pulled down her tattered sleeve to cover up the wound on her left arm with all her might. Her severed arm drooped down, and the bite wound was excruciatingly painful. Feng Manyan barely propped herself up and crawled backwards. It's fine, she'll be fine. Feng Manyan slowly shrunk backwards with a face drenched in sweat and tears, until a piercing voice rang beside her. Someone come quickly. Physician Feng was bitten by a zombie. No, I didn't, it's not. It's not a zombie, he's not a zombie. 5 to 6 burly men swarmed towards her and twisted her arm in reverse. They abruptly shoved her, pressing her face firmly against the filthy tent. Ah! Feng Manyan shrieked as if she had lost her mind, and she kept twisting her arm as she shouted sternly, Let go of me! Let go of me! Let go of me! Let go of me! Be careful not to get scratched by her. The assistant manager's pupils contracted when he saw the woman's deranged state. Don't, assistant manager, don't. Xiangqin hastily went up to tug at the assistant manager's arm. Let go of my miss. Miss is also a victim. You can't let go of her. Look at her arm. The women stared at Feng Manyan's left arm, which was dripping with blood continuously in horror. Let go of me, you bunch of cursed idiots. Lowly people. How dare you treat me like this? I won't let you off. Feng Manyan shrieked viciously, and her arms kept twisting as she tried to break free from the burly men's control. Bang! One of the burly men decisively punched her on the head. Feng Manyan's head tilted, and her eyeballs rolled around. She only felt her vision darken, and she gradually lost consciousness as she slumped into the crook of a burly man's arm. Tie her up first. The assistant manager directed those burly men to find several sturdy ropes to bind Feng Manyan. Xiangqin was bawling her eyes out, and she knelt before the assistant manager with disheveled hair. Assistant manager, I beg you, please don't harm our miss. Xiangqin, your miss has already been bitten by a zombie. She'll mutate very soon and become like that person. The assistant manager's face was filled with horror as he pointed at the mutated man, who was being guarded by dozens of heavily armored guards. She won't. Miss won't lose her mind. Young Miss will be fine. Assistant manager, you have to believe me. Miss is one of the top 50 physicians in the Celestial Medical Valley. She will definitely be able to cure herself. Xiangqin scrambled to the vice manager's feet and hugged his leg as she cried out. Before we left the valley this time, Mrs. Master gave Miss a profound-grade medicinal pill that can cure all kinds of illnesses. Assistant manager, Ms. Her assistant manager. Her. A black-rank pill was a legendary item, and it could be considered the treasure of every major pill house. As expected of Celestial Medicine Valley, any random disciple could possess a black-rank pill. Even members of the pill union might not necessarily possess this kind of black-rank pill. MHM. Xiangqin wiped away the tears on her cheeks with her sleeve and nodded repeatedly. It's true, assistant manager. I'm not lying to you, it's true. Miss has a black-rank pill on her, she does. Chapter 771. The assistant manager couldn't help but be skeptical. Where is that black-rank pill right now? I can't say where it is, but as long as you wake Miss up and let Miss take this black-rank pill, then she will definitely be fine, Xiangqin said with certainty. The assistant manager had people restrain the trussed-up Feng Mannion first. Although you say this for safety's sake, I can't completely believe your words for the time being. Let's tie her up first. Assistant manager. Xiangqin creased her brows and was about to speak when two sturdy women went up and grabbed her arms. Behave yourself. Roar. In the open space next to the tent, the mutated burly man was tied up by several dozen guards with 3 to 4 arm-thick ropes, and he roared furiously at the sky. The city lord's estate's guards each held a rope firmly in their hands, and they simultaneously exerted their strength with a roar to restrain the burly man's movements. The mutated burly man roared several times as he tugged at the ropes around his limbs with all his might. He raised his hands above his head and opened his huge mouth to roar. 7 to 8 heavily armored city lord's estate's guards were actually lifted up by the strength of his arms. Their feet abruptly left the ground, and they flailed about with shocked expressions. The remaining dozen or so guards instantly tightened the ropes around their arms, and they were dragged forward several steps by the mutated burly man's brute force. Their feet were firmly hooked to the ground, and they scraped up thick sand marks. Roar! The mutated burly man raised his head and roared furiously. Suddenly, he pulled over a nearby guard and snapped him into two, kicking him to the side like trash. Husband! The young woman's vision darkened, and she fainted on the spot from fright. During this tug and pull, several armored city lords' estate's guards were no match for the mutated burly man's boundless strength, and they were pulled to the side and piled together like a human pyramid. The assistant manager hastily had people bring out bows and arrows while muttering, "Release the arrows! Release the arrows! Release the arrows!" Swish, swish, swish. Several iron arrowheads pierced through the burly man's body, but the burly man didn't feel any pain. Instead, such an action angered him even more. An inhuman roar came from his mouth, and he suddenly raised his left arm. Several guards of the city lord's mansion followed the force of his pull and pounced over. They were about to pounce on the burly man and be torn to pieces. Suddenly, a silver light flashed across the sky and pierced into the mutated brawny man's left eye with a swoosh, causing a terrifying hissing sound. The mutated man raised his head and roared as he staggered back a few steps. In the blink of an eye, a black figure suddenly stopped at the top of the tent. With a slight stomp of his feet, he leapt towards the mutated brawny man's head. Swoosh! The sword landed on the mutant man's neck, which was as hard as steel. This slash actually produced sparks from the collision. "Young hero, be careful!" The assistant manager stretched out his hand and shouted with a greatly changed expression. However, the newcomer turned a deaf ear to his shout and directly pulled out the long sword that was half embedded in the brawny man's neck. The sword was covered in a layer of pure white profound light, and the sword in his hand quickly swept across the brawny man's neck. Ah! The mutated brawny man let out an unpleasant blood-curdling scream, and his entire body suddenly fell backwards, heavily smashing into the ground. In a short moment, his head fell from his neck and was sliced into 4 or 5 pieces by the sword in the black-clothed youth's hand. Clap, clap, clap. 2 or 3 scattered claps came from behind the crowd. Chapter 772. The assistant manager and the others turned to look, only to see a young man about 20 years old leading a dozen or so young men and women carrying swords striding over. He chuckled as he looked at the black-clothed youth who had made a move. Ha ha ha. I didn't expect our sixth young master Zheng to have such a heroic complex. Sigh. To actually draw his sword to help when he sees injustice on the road. TSK. This kind of character truly isn't like a member of the Zheng family. Truly impressive. The young man who spoke curled his lips mockingly as he cast a sidelong glance at the black-clothed youth. Make way, make way, make way. A dozen or so young men and women squeezed out from the crowd of onlookers. The man in the lead wore a brocade robe and was slightly plump. When he saw the black-clothed youth, his eyes suddenly lit up, and he hastily rubbed his hands as he walked up with a smile, calling out, Sixth young master, why are you walking so fast? Sixth Zheng sheathed his sword and calmly cast a sidelong glance at the plump young man. The plump young man cracked open his mouth and giggled foolishly. He abruptly turned his head and pursed his lips to glare at the young master, who had mocked Sixth Zheng. Hey, Hui Fan, are you looking for trouble for no reason? What, you're not convinced that you lost to our sixth young master in the previous competition? Then come at me. The young man who had mocked Sixth Zheng earlier was precisely the second brother of the Royal Guard commander Hui Fan, a young lady who resembled Hui Fan somewhat, also with a square face and dashing eyebrows, gave a cold snort when she heard this. She cast a sidelong glance at sixth young master Zheng and said, Fishing for fame and compliments, putting on an act. You old lady who can't get married. Who are you saying is coarse? Coarse? Who are you talking about? The plump young man couldn't say the words fishing for fame and compliments coherently, so he could only cough lightly and smooth things over for himself. This daddy disdains to quarrel with an old lady like you. Wu Xiaoan. Someone with such a low cultural level like you should speak less incoherently if you can't speak coherently. It's making people laugh. Hui Ling crossed her arms and swept a disdainful glance at the plump young man. Who dares to laugh? Who dares to laugh at an old fellow? Wu Xiaoan was so angry that his chubby face was bulging. Sixth Zheng. Hui Fan led his men and walked to the front of the black-clothed youth with his head held high. Along the way, our two teams were almost evenly matched, and we couldn't decide who was better. How about this? From now on, we'll set a day as the limit. Whoever can get a dough of food first will be the winner. Everyone, let's rely on our own abilities regardless of our methods. How about that? Do you dare to compete? By this time, the assistant manager had already recovered his wits, and he hastily led his subordinates to welcome sixth young master Zheng. He repeatedly bowed and said, Many thanks to this young master for lending a hand. Sixth Zheng cupped his fists in return and didn't say anything. His handsome face was taut from beginning to end, without the slightest hint of a smile. Go away, go away. Hui Ling rudely pushed aside the assistant manager, who was squeezing between them, and looked at sixth young master Zheng with raised brows. Sixth Zheng, did you hear what my brother said? Do you dare to make a statement? Fuck. Old woman who wouldn't dare. Ah. Wu Xiao crooked his mouth and slanted his eyes. He looked back at Hui Fan and his sister with a disdainful expression. Who are you calling an old woman? Hui Ling swung a fist over, but it was directly blocked by Sixth Zheng's sword. Wu Xiao hid behind Sixth Zheng and made a face at Hui Ling. I'm talking about whoever responds. You're already 22, but you still haven't gotten married. Just look at the entire capital. How many old ladies are there like you? I'm going to beat you to death with your cheap mouth. Hui Ling's expression abruptly changed, and she raised her hand to slap Wu Xiaoan, who was behind Sixth Zheng. Chapter 773. Sixth Zheng suddenly raised his hand and pushed his scabbard in front of Hui Ling, blocking her punch. He gazed at her coldly and said softly, Not competing. Sixth Zheng, it's not like we're scared of them. A trace of unwillingness flitted across Wu Xiaoan's chubby face. Besides, we have you, so why should we be scared of them? Don't want to compete. Sixth Zheng withdrew his scabbard and turned to leave. Hui Ling abruptly shot forward to block his path, her willowy eyebrows furrowing as she reprimanded. Sixth Zheng, what do you mean? Are you looking down on our flying rock operation team? Sigh, I'm just looking down on you guys. Wu Xiaowen's words made Hui Ling want to slap his cheap mouth again. Sixth Zheng glared coldly at Wu Xiaowen, causing him to shrink his neck and retreat back into the team. Miss Hui, we still have other important matters to attend to on this trip. Sixth Zheng's bright black gaze landed on Hui Ling's face, causing the latter to blush slightly as she guiltily avoided his gaze. Yo, Hui Ling, your face is all red, hee ha ha ha. Wu Xiaowen, who had a cheap mouth, reverted to his old ways and laughed loudly. It can't be that you still have some unrealistic thoughts about our sixth young master even now, right? You aren't married at such an old age, so it can't be that you're foolishly waiting for our sixth young master to grow up, right? Ha 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 ha. This is too hilarious. You're a full 5 years older than sixth young master. You're an old lady, yet you're still thinking about sixth young master, who is in his prime. Why don't you go home and look in the mirror? Go to hell, Wu Xiaowen, you lowly wretch. See if I can't kill you. Hui Ling threw a cold saber at Wu Xiaowen's mouth. Sixth Zheng suddenly reached out, grabbing the laughing Wu Xiaowen and irritably slapping the back of his head. Enough nonsense. When the assistant manager saw that these two teams were about to come to blows, he hastily led people forward to stop them. Everyone, please calm down. You're the manager here, right? We want to enter the city. Hui Ling took her saber and roared at the assistant manager in humiliation. Everyone, my apologies. Bailon City is currently under martial law, and the city gates only open once a day. If you want to enter the city, you have to wait until tomorrow morning. So troublesome. Hui Ling hugged her saber and walked away angrily. Second brother, I want a separate tent. Tisk. Wu Xiaowen pursed his lips. There are many ugly people. Hui Fan swept a cold glance at Wu Xiaowen, who promptly rubbed his chin and sneakily hid behind Sixth Zheng. Hui Fan cupped his fists and saluted Sixth Zheng absent-mindedly. Sixth Zheng returned the salute and calmly watched the members of Operation Peng leave. Sixth Zheng, after we resupply in the city, we still have to continue with the mission. Wu Xiaowen muttered. Who would have thought that you, the sixth young master of the Zheng estate, would have to go out on missions to earn your living expenses? You reap what you sow, it's only right. Sixth Zheng sheathed his sword on his back and turned to walk towards the assistant manager to inquire about accommodations. Inside Bailon City's yellow pole breeding farm, when Hong Yaowei and the others were forcefully dragged by City Lord Lin to the embankment of the field, they saw the Crown Prince and Crown Princess smiling at each other as they stood in the middle of a patch of bright yellow pole field. At this time, Hong Yaowei already couldn't be bothered to look at how pleasing this handsome man and beautiful woman were to his eyes. He gaped with a stupefied expression as he dazedly looked at the suddenly ripe yellow pole field. He practically rubbed his eyes in disbelief. Chapter 774. How is that possible? It was impossible. According to their breeding records, it would take at least 8 to 9 days for this yellow pole field to reach the half-ripened stage. But it suddenly ripened today. Didn't they find it too strange? Hong Yaowei abruptly turned to look at City Lord Lin, only to see that Lin Yongyi also looked like he had seen a ghost. City Lord Lin, didn't you say that my junior sister ruined the yellow pole field? When Lin Yongyi came to find him just now, it was as if he had seen his father's murderer. He pounced on him and gave him a few punches without any explanation, beating him until the corners of his eyes were swollen. But now, wasn't it the greatest irony that the yellow pole field looked like it had a bountiful harvest? Lin Yongyi also subconsciously wiped his eyes. He hastily got off the ground and scooped up a handful of soil. After examining the yellow poles, he couldn't resist laughing with tears in his eyes. All right, this is great. City Lord Lin, what's going on? Hong Yaowei turned to look suspiciously in Arbor and Imo Lian's direction. On the way here, he had already heard that it was the Crown Princess who had skillfully cured the symptoms of the Edelweiss in their bodies. He also heard that she had also cured the lethal poison left behind by his junior sister, Feng Manyan, in the well. Hong Yaowei was filled with shock and suspicion. The poison in his junior sister's hands must have been brought out from Celestial Medicine Valley. It was an extremely poisonous substance. Even so, this crown prince consort was able to resolve it so easily. It could be seen that her medical skills were brilliant. The scariest thing was that he suspected that this crown princess might have some spirit herb that could accelerate the growth of plants. Thus, she could ripen the entire yellow pole field overnight. Unfortunately, City Lord Lin ignored him and didn't have the intention to explain to him. He simply threw himself into the yellow pole field and shouted while crying and laughing. After going through numerous trials and tribulations, this batch of yellow pole field finally ripened. Prince Mo grasped the little girl's small hand tightly and whispered into her ear, "You can't tell anyone about the sacred soil." A small pinch of sacred soil plus the watering of sacred water could actually revive nearly 10 mu of yellow pole field, resulting in such a bountiful harvest. Naturally, he couldn't let others know about such an eye-opening sacred object. Otherwise, it would be like the holy water, attracting covetous eyes and causing unnecessary trouble. Xiaomu tilted her small head and nodded in understanding. The sacred land was in seclusion. Other than the sacred land in her hands, she didn't have anything else. After all, she still hadn't completely fused with the earth essence. If she could fuse with it like the holy water, she would be able to control the water and soil on her own. It would be much more convenient for her to plant anything. The little fellow looked up and whispered to him, "Mo Lien, tell me what you want to plant in the future. I'll secretly put some holy soil in the ground and water it. When the time comes, you'll get whatever you want." It can also completely improve the quality of the soil, accelerate the harvest, and increase the yield. Mo Lien was in a good mood as she reached out to pinch the little girl's tender cheeks. She reached out and hugged her. "My baby is really amazing. If the little guy had a tail, it would definitely be wagging it left and right," he said proudly. "Of course. Don't joke around. This was the power of the sacred land and holy water, the origin of the 5 spirits. It was just planting something. How could it not be easy?" Mo Lien couldn't help but laugh. He carried her and walked out of the field ridge. He whispered in her ear, "I'll get someone to collect this piece of land and plant another batch." While the effects of the sacred land and holy water hadn't completely disappeared, let the yellow pole seeds also freeload with great nourishment in the next round. Chapter 775. If his guess wasn't wrong, after the improvement of the sacred earth and sacred water, the yellow stalks planted in this 10 mu of farmland could be shortened by at least 1/3. Moreover, they didn't need to find a commissioner to take care of the farmland anymore. They only needed to send several honest farmers to be responsible for irrigating the fields regularly, so they basically didn't need to expend any effort. When the crown prince revealed this news to City Lord Lin, Lin Yongyi cried tears of joy again. This was great news. "City Lord Lin?" Hong Yaowei questioned with a grim face. "What exactly is going on? Why is the yellow stalk field?" "Guards!" Lin Yongyi suddenly hollered, and the guards of the city lord's estate immediately swarmed over and bowed to await his order. "Break this person's limbs and throw him out of the farm immediately," Lin Yongyi bellowed while pointing at Hong Yaowei with a solemn expression. "Lin Yongyi, you dare!" Hong Yaowei was so anxious that his eyes had turned red, and he was forced to kneel on the ground. Hong Yaowei shrieked, "Lin Yongyi, I'm from Celestial Medicine Valley. Lin Yongyi, you bastard. You actually dared to lay your hands on me. I'm from the Mo Kingdom capital's Hong Estate. You dare, you dare." Ah! Smack! A staff smashed heavily into Hong Yaowei's back. Hong Yaowei was only an ordinary physician, so wouldn't he fall to the ground while spitting out blood and foaming at the mouth from this strike? "Your junior sister, Feng Manyan, is vicious and wants to kill everyone in the entire farm. Don't blame me. If you want to blame someone, blame that good junior sister of yours. People like you simply don't deserve to be physicians. Break his limbs for me. Make sure they can't practice medicine and harm people in the future." Lin Yongyi waved his hand resentfully, leaving behind a group of vicious subordinates to furiously smash Hong Yaowei's limbs. A quarter of an hour later, a crippled and blood-soaked person was carried out of the farm and thrown out of the door, leaving him to fend for himself. "Lin Yongyi, Feng Manyan, You're the ones who harmed me. Hong Yaowei couldn't conceal the hatred in his eyes. His body trembled as he crawled forward, dragging out a long trail of blood on the ground. Suddenly, a black shadow landed beside him. Hong Yaowei raised his head to look, but before he could see the person's face clearly, his neck was slit by a sharp sword. The night was quiet, and the moon was as clear as water. Mo Lien sat sideways on the edge of the bed and reached out to pat the little one on the bed. Under the illumination of the moonlight, the little fellow hugged the chubby little white squirrel and fell into a deep slumber. The window frame moved slightly. Mo Lien reached out to help her tuck in the corner of the quilt. He got up and walked towards the door. With a flick of his sleeve, the candle flame followed his figure and gradually went out. Your Highness, Hong Yaowei has already been cleaned up. Huifeng cupped his hands and murmured. Yes. Mo Lien responded indifferently. She raised her hand and gently closed the door. I want the information of everyone in the Hong family. Yes. Lin Yongyi is benevolent and righteous, but he is not decisive enough. Choose someone to support him. Yes. Huifeng nodded slightly and watched as the crown prince left. He then turned to glance at the side room, and shortly after, he disappeared into the night with a single breath. Cuckoo. A black shadow glided across the night sky and sank into the moonlit night. The sleeping arbor seemed to have stirred and abruptly opened his eyes. He stared coldly at the muslin canopy above his head and stared blankly for a while. He abruptly jumped down from the bed barefoot. He arrived at the edge of the bed in a flash and gently lifted the curtain with his fingers. His gaze was clear as he gazed at the hazy night outside. Chapter 776. Under the night sky, a short and small figure stealthily crept up to the wooden prisoner carriage. Suddenly, she threw herself in front of the pillar and called out softly, Mississippi, Xiangqin, hurry and untie my ropes. Xiangqin heaved a sigh of relief and glanced at the 2 to 3 guards who had long fallen unconscious on the ground. She hastily went up and reached her hands through the wooden cage, hastily peeling off the ropes on Feng Manyun's body. Miss, where did you put your black rank pill? Hurry and take it out and consume it. Right. My black rank pill. Feng Manyun, who was sitting in the prisoner carriage, quickly took out a small round porcelain bottle from her chest pocket. She poured out that life-saving black rank pill and swallowed it in one gulp. Miss, these guards have all been knocked unconscious by me. They're fine now. Xiangqin, find the key and quickly release me. After the master and servant busied themselves for a while, Xiangqin finally took out the key to open the lock and helped Feng Manyun down from the prisoner carriage. Miss, is your arm all right? What could be wrong with me? Xiangqin's words seemed to have triggered an abnormal nerve in Feng Manyun, and she immediately wanted to howl loudly. Xiangqin hastily reached out to gag Feng Manyun's mouth. Miss, don't make a fuss. My medicine is only enough to knock out these people. If the assistant manager and the rest are summoned, we won't be able to escape. Feng Manyun quieted down and muttered to herself, as if she was talking to herself, but also as if she was consoling herself. I'm fine, my arm will be fine. That isn't a zombie at all. He hasn't undergone a zombie transformation. I will definitely be able to treat it myself. I can treat it. Miss, our carriage is over there. I'll help you over. Let's hurry and leave. No matter what injury it is, when we return to Celestial Medicine Valley, the old Valley Master will definitely take care of it. That's right. Feng Manyun nodded repeatedly neurotically before turning to Xiangqin with a dazed gaze. Xiangqin, when I return to Celestial Medicine Valley, I will definitely reward you well. Miss, I'm relieved as long as you're fine. The master and servant pair stealthily crept to their original carriage. Just as they were about to board, Feng Manyun raised her head neurotically and vigilantly gazed at the horizon. After a gurgling sound, something seemed to glide across the sky. Miss, it's only a few nighthawks. Don't worry, we can leave this place very soon. Xiangqin helped Feng Manyun into the carriage. Just as Feng Manyun bent over and lifted the curtain, she saw a contorted and stiff face abruptly closing in on her with its mouth wide open. Half an eyeball actually fell out of its socket, and its empty eye socket stared fixedly at Feng Manyun. Ah! Feng Manyun rolled out of the carriage in fright. Her originally injured arm snapped again with a crack from this toss. 3 or 4 strange people with stiff and twisted expressions crawled out of the car one after another, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws as they pounced at the master and servant. Go away, go away! Xiangqin screeched as she picked up a wooden stick and smashed it fiercely at the 2 strange people pouncing over. At the same time, screams and yells continuously rang out from several tents. The tent district was in a mess, and countless people rushed out of their tents in bewilderment. Light the lanterns, quickly light the lanterns! The assistant manager jumped out of his tent and shouted loudly, "See you tomorrow!" Chapter 777. What's going on? When the City Lord Manor's guards lit their torches, and the assistant manager saw the scene in the shed area, he couldn't help but be shocked, cold sweat dripping down his forehead, only to see that the entire shed area was in chaos. Mutated people with stiff bodies and slow movements were everywhere, biting and tearing at the ordinary civilians they caught. Assistant manager, not good. A guard hurriedly reported. I don't know what's going on, but a portion of the injured people have all mutated. The injured people collectively mutated. This kind of thing had never been heard of before. This caught everyone off guard. Everyone was caught off guard. Everyone was caught off guard. Many of the people living in the shed area were operation teams that went out to do missions. According to the rules, they had to stay in the shed area for 3 to 5 days before they could enter the city. Therefore, when the shed area became chaotic, the operation team members were the first to run out of their tents, spontaneously forming a battle line, and at the same time going forward to encircle and annihilate the mutated people. Of course, there were 1 or 2 operation teams that were caught off guard and attacked by their own team members. Hui Fan's Flying Rock operation team was one of the teams that were attacked by their own team members. Hui Ling's eyes were red, staring at 2 of her own team members who were firmly pressed down on the ground, constantly howling and howling, as if they had completely lost their mind. She cried and scolded. How can it be like this? Our team didn't encounter any corpse puppets these few days. The injury on Old Hu's leg was clearly scraped by the earth thorns. How can it be like this? He's clearly almost recovered. Press him down. Hui Fan raised his sword and strode forward, grabbing the hair of the team member, who was howling nonstop. The sword in his hand didn't hesitate at all, as he slashed towards Old Hu's neck. Captain, second brother. He has lost his mind. He's mutated. Leaving him alive will only harm us. Hui Fan's eyes were scarlet. He roared and decisively chopped off Old Hu's head. The rest of the Flying Rock operation team members all cried out. How can it be like this? Hui Ling's tears were like a broken string of pearls rolling down. Be careful not to get hurt. Hui Fan tightly clenched his fists, the veins on his neck popping out. I don't know why it's like this. But this situation, I don't think it's an exception. In short, pay attention to protect yourself. Those who had profound armaments had all activated their defensive barriers. If you don't have a Xian artifact, put on your armor. Everyone pay attention. Boom! The tent door was suddenly broken by someone, and a gust of cold wind suddenly poured in. Roar! A few mutated humans with bulging eyeballs rushed in, baring their fangs. Their eyes were slightly bloodshot. Clang! One of the body cultivators smashed the metal rod in his hand into the face of one of the mutants without hesitation. The mutated human flew out and crashed into another person. Then, he rolled on the ground and roared as he pounced forward. The tent was torn apart by Hui Fan's sword, and the 12 surviving members of the Flying Rock squad all stood back to back, fending off the mutants that were pouncing on them from all directions. Why are all these people mutated? The assistant manager cried out in shock. Quick, quick! Ring the bell to warn the inner city. Quick! Assistant manager, deputy manager, a large group of people has appeared on the road ahead, and they are heading towards our city gate. Let us enter the city. Let us enter the city. A group of frightened commoners rushed towards the city gate in a panic. Chapter 778. They were too scared that a perfectly fine tent district would suddenly be filled with terrifying monsters. The common people only wanted to live, so they all rushed toward the city gate. Their emotions were surging and somewhat out of control, and everyone let out cries of alarm. Sixth Zheng lifted the tent flap and pierced the zombie that suddenly appeared in front of him with his sword. The long sword passed through its throat, emitting a gurgling sound. He pulled out his sword. There were no bloodstains on it, only some mud-like unknown substance. Sixth young master, save me! The slightly plump Wu Xiaoin staggered and fell flat on his face. He got up, pulled up his pants and strode toward Sixth Zheng. Just as he reached Sixth young master, Wu Xiaoin stepped on a round log and kowtowed in front of Sixth young master with a thud. The corner of Sixth Zheng's mouth twitched. He stepped forward and lifted him up. Wu Xiaoin tugged at his belt, cutting a sorry figure. It looked like he had been badly frightened by the zombie that suddenly attacked. He didn't know if he was unlucky or lucky, but when he went out to pee in the middle of the night, he drowsily heard a strange gnawing sound. Halfway through peeing, he turned around and saw a bloody mouth open at him. Wu Xiaoin was so frightened that his 3 souls and 7 spirits flew away. He even freaking peed on his hand. He didn't even have time to pull up his pants before running to Sixth young master for help. Sixth young master. So scary. What's going on? Wu Xiao and asked through chattering teeth. Where are the others? Sixth young master. Sixth young master. Wu Xiao's Earth Dragon operation team had a total of 17 members. Including him and Sixth young master, there were only 13 people who ran out of the tent. Where are those 4 people? Wu Xiao roared as he pulled up his pants. The 4 of them are. A female team member wept and hung her head. Fuck. Wu Xiao was so angry that he threw away half of his belt and casually tied a knot on his pants. What are you crying for? Fuck these guys. Fuck them to death. However, Wu Xiao's cool didn't last more than 3 seconds. Move. Everyone move aside. At this time, a group of people clustered around a tall and handsome young master in snow-white clothes and a fox fur coat. Behind these people was a group of fleeing commoners, no less than 500 to 600 people. This way, there were even more people in the tent district. It's second Do. It is second young master Do. A few short exclamations came from Wu Xiao's side. The members of the Earth Dragon operation all looked at the young man in the snow-white robe in disbelief. Wu Xiaoin instantly cowered and hid behind Sixth Zheng. This second young master Do, who was renowned throughout the capital for being brimming with talent, reportedly resided in Celestial Medicine Valley all year round. Why would he appear at Bailon City's city gate today? Mingling in the crowd, Feng Manyin, who was using a piece of sackcloth to wrap her severed arm and half cover her head, also clearly saw this second young Sir Do, and she couldn't help but tremble all over. Miss, why did young Sir come? Xiangqin's pupils also contracted slightly, and she leaned close to Feng Manyin to ask in a low voice. This was the disciple that the old Valley Master was most proud of. It was said that he was the most promising person to become the next Valley Master of the Celestial Medicine Valley. Normally, Feng Manyin would only glance at him from afar. With her seniority and ranking, she simply wasn't allowed to get close to this young sir. The old Valley Master's granddaughter has also come. Feng Manyin slowly shrank into the crowd. You are this place's manager? Wenren Ningjing tilted her head and gazed innocently at the assistant manager, whose forehead was drenched in sweat. Open the city gate. Chapter 779. Clang clang clang. The warning bell rang, and everyone in the city was startled awake from their dreams. Emolienne hurriedly put on her clothes and sprinted into her room in Arbor First. She couldn't help but be startled when she pushed open the door to take a look. The little lady had long finished dressing up. Under the waning light, she slowly turned her head around. Her white gown appeared elegant and natural under the moonlight. On the other side, City Lord Lin's eyelids were twitching wildly as he crawled out of bed. He hurriedly put on his clothes before rushing to the city gate. When he climbed up the city gate tower to take a look, his eyeballs nearly popped out of their sockets. The entire Shed district was rather chaotic. Originally, there were close to 1,000 people squeezed into the Shed district, and now, with the several hundred commoners that Second Do had brought over, The passageway was almost full. Countless people crowded at the city gate, wailing, "Open the city gate! Open the city gate! Open the city gate!" A man carrying his old mother on his back shouted as he banged his head against the sturdy city gate. "City Lord, I beg you to be merciful. Let my child enter the city, City Lord." Lin Yongyi was a benevolent person to begin with, and he couldn't bear to see this kind of scene the most. Even his eyes were a bit red. However, he still had a trace of reason in the end. After hurriedly asking the soldiers guarding the city, he found out that the entire Shed district had encountered an unforeseen event. All of the injured had actually mutated into zombies? As the city lord, not only did he have to empathize with the lives of these commoners outside the city, he also had to protect the lives of the several tens of thousands of people inside the city. "City Lord," Old Man Sun said gravely, "I'll send people to step up patrols inside the city. If the injured can all mutate into zombies while still alive, then what about inside the city? Who knew if someone in the city had mutated after suffering a minor injury for no reason?" Alarmed, Lin Yongyi hurriedly nodded and said, "Hurry, hurry. City Lord, for some reason, there is a large group of zombies 5 kilometers away heading towards Bailon City." Second Do's deep and calm voice slowly rang out under the night sky. "City Lord should quickly open the city gate and let these innocent commoners in." Lin Yongyi's expression changed in alarm, and he clenched his fists. "Is this true?" While Second Do was speaking, many small squads were currently fighting with the mutated people in the Shed district outside the city. The defenseless civilians huddled together, as much as possible to prevent themselves from being scratched by the zombies that suddenly pounced on them. "I'm not lying. What are you nagging about, old man? Hurry and open the city gates." Wenren Ningjing was so anxious that she stomped her feet. "As the city lord, you're responsible for the lives of the people. Are you going to watch as your people are torn to shreds by the corpse puppets?" Lin Yongyi's lips drooped as he clenched his fists. "No, we can't open the city gates. How would I know if any of these people had been scratched by the corpse puppet? Is there anyone mutating? If we let them rush into the city, wouldn't they bring disaster to all the people in the city? You damned old man." Wenren Ningjing pointed at the city gate tower and cursed. "The people inside are people, but aren't the people outside? How can you bear to watch them die without doing anything?" Lin Yongyi stiffened his neck and turned his head. "I can't make the decision on this matter." "Then tell the one who can make the decision to come out." Next to Wenren Ningjing, an arrogant and bossy girl shouted angrily, "Your Highness! Your Highness! Greetings to Your Highness!" Greetings came one after another from below the city gate tower. It wasn't until Emo Lian's figure appeared on the city gate tower that Lin Yongyi wiped the sweat on his forehead and bowed towards Emo Lian with a wry smile. "Your Highness!" Chapter 780. It was already late at night. Arbor was draped in an ice silk mink fur cloak, a small hand warmer tucked in her sleeve. She slowly followed Emo Lian up the city gate tower. She glanced down the city gate tower, but her gaze was fixed on one spot, and her small hand involuntarily gripped the brick. Arbor's eyes suddenly brightened, and she muttered, "Little Six." Among the crowd, the black-clothed youth's figure appeared extremely vigorous and outstanding. A longsword danced in his hand, chopping, slashing, and stabbing. His sword pierced the space between a corpse puppet's brows, and his body lightly leapt up. Agile as a swimming dragon, his figure like a demon. After a few leaps, the youth had already arrived at a fatty's side, helping him block a corpse puppet that pounced from the side. The fatty broke out in a cold sweat, hastily reaching out to subconsciously grab at his slipping pants. He turned to Sixth Zheng and nodded gratefully. "Sixth young master, many thanks." "Jojo." Emo Lian didn't look at anyone else, her gaze landing on Arbor. Naturally, she immediately discovered her abnormality. Following her gaze, she saw a youth with decent skills, and her slender brows furrowed slightly. Arbor's gaze fixed on the youth with fluttering ink-black hair, and the corners of her lips involuntarily curled up. She truly didn't expect to see Little Six in this kind of situation. Seeing him live so energetically, she didn't know what to think. "Jojo." Alarm bells rang in Prince Mo's mind. What was going on? Jojo's eyes seemed to be glowing as he stared at that youth. This kind of Jojo was rarely seen. He had never seen Jojo's eyes light up when he stared at someone. It was as if he had discovered some kind of treasure. Arbor turned her head in confusion and met the Crown Prince's eyes. At this time, second young Master Dou's voice came from below the city gate tower. Dou Fenghua greets Your Highness the Crown Prince. Only then did Prince Mo's gaze shift to below the city gate tower, indifferently sweeping over second Dou's face. So it's the Dou family's second son. Dou family? Arbor was slightly startled. He quickly turned his gaze to Dou Fenghua. It was a handsome young man dressed in plain white clothes. He had a graceful bearing and a noble temperament. It seemed to be quite different from the barbaric and shameless Dou family in her impression. Why? Your Highness, please open the city gates and let the people outside the city in. Second Dou cupped his hands in salute and hastened to plead. If this Dou's guess is correct, a large group of corpse puppets will surge over in about the time it takes to brew a cup of tea. Even though you're pleading for the people and everything you say is true, I'm afraid that you're wrong. However, my view is the same as the city lord's. Mo Lien said indifferently. Before confirming that these people are not infected, no one is allowed to enter the city. Your Highness. Cries could be heard from outside the city. Your Highness, please save us. Your Highness. Wenren Ningjing and one of her sisters beside her stomped their feet in anger, pointing at Mo Lien and cursing. What kind of country's heir apparent are you? You look on helplessly as your people suffer outside. What right do you have to be the Crown Prince? Shut up. Arbor's gaze turned cold as she angrily shouted. Her crisp voice, wrapped in a deterrent force, immediately suppressed all the chaotic clamor. Everyone raised their heads and looked at her in a daze. You're not allowed to slander the Crown Prince. You're even more not allowed to scold him. Arbor pointed at Wenren Ningjing and Wenren Ningjing, her gaze suddenly stern. Chapter 781. Who are you? Wenren Ningjing shouted, her eyebrows furrowed. You don't have the right to know. Arbor raised his hand with a cold expression, and the crow-repeating crossbow extended from his sleeve, suddenly aiming in Wenren Ningjing's direction. What are you doing? Wenren Ningjing cried out in alarm, hugging her head and shrinking her neck. She only felt a rush of wind blow past her ear, and the arrow seemed to have hit something in an instant, and the sound of something falling to the ground came from behind her. Wenren Ningjing turned her head and finally saw clearly. It turned out that one of the commoners in the group had already quietly mutated, grabbing towards the back of her head. However, he was sent flying by an arrow from the little girl on the city gate tower, directly piercing through his head, making him deader than he could be. The city gate tower was at least 300 meters away from here. With this kind of arm strength and eyesight, it instantly caused the area outside the city gate tower to be so silent that even a pin drop could be heard. Look at you motley crew stray dogs. You actually have the face to scold others? Turn around and take a look. How many of you are actually fighting? Arbor sneered with extreme mockery. If you were the Crown Prince, you'd probably be so scared that you wouldn't even dare to go up the city gate tower. Prince Mo turned to look at his Jojo with a grin. The little girl's wholehearted protection caused the trace of displeasure that had arisen in His Highness the Crown Prince's heart to instantly fly away. Look, his Jojo was the most protective of him. Your Highness, it was this Dou who didn't think things through. Dou Fenghua recovered his wits and hurriedly said, but there are close to 10,000 zombies gathered nearby. If we don't open the city gate then, do you think this is feasible? Time is of the essence right now, and we can't check them one by one. Would Your Highness please open up an independent area in the city, and let all of us enter first before checking them one by one? Your Highness can send some guards to watch us. This way, if there are any unexpected situations, we can react in time. 10,000 zombies. Second young Master Dou's words startled City Lord Lin so much that he immediately jumped up. Second young Master Dou, are you speaking the truth? Only more, not less. Second Dou raised his head to look at Prince Mo. May Your Highness please make a decision. Looks like there'll be a bloody battle today. Mo Lien said coldly. Second Dou, your suggestion is also pertinent. Let's do that for now. Lin Yongyi. Thank you, Your Highness. Second Do let out a sigh of relief and turned to look at Wenren Ningjing. Yes, Your Highness. Lin Yongyi immediately ordered 300 soldiers to descend from the city gate tower. Then, he ordered people to turn the winch and pull open the city gate. He drove the commoners outside the city to a small plaza near the city gate tower to watch over them. Miss, are we going in or not? Xiang Qin was confused. Previously, they had risked their lives to get out of the city. Who would have thought that they would have to return to the city in less than a night? What the hell was he doing? Are you stupid? Of course we have to enter. Feng Manyan casually picked up a cloak and wrapped herself inside, twitching slightly with a contorted face. She didn't want to stay outside the city to be torn apart and eaten raw by those ugly zombies. Miss, but what if someone discovers your injuries? Stop talking nonsense. Let's go in first. Enter the city. After Sixth Zheng cleaned up the last zombie beside him, he grabbed the hand of a team member next to him and pushed him into the crowd. Second Do and Wenren Ningjing's group also stood at the back of the crowd, not in a hurry to enter the city. At this time, when their gazes met, Second Young Master Do nodded at Sixth Zheng. Sixth Young Master Zheng. Chapter 782. Sixth Zheng cast a sidelong glance at Second Young Master Do before nodding slightly in agreement. Suddenly, a very tall and sturdy zombie darted out from behind a dilapidated tent where Sixth Zheng was standing, pouncing toward Sixth Zheng's head like a tiger. The distance was too close for Sixth Zheng to react in time. Wenren Ningjing hastily pulled Second Young Master Do's arm and hastily retreated several steps, shouting, "Senior brother, be careful." Actually, that zombie was still some distance away from Second Young Master Do. Moreover, it was pouncing in Sixth Zheng's direction, so it couldn't harm her senior brother at all. If Wenren Ningjing was willing to help Sixth Young Master Do, his crisis would be resolved immediately. However, Wenren Ningjing only had eyes for her senior brother and no one else. Boom! In the nick of time, an arrow from the city gate tower directly pierced through the zombie's head, nailing it to the tent behind it. The night wind assaulted the city gate tower. A plainclothed figure was elegant and exquisite, her figure snowy and icy. Separated by the boundless night, Sixth Zheng turned his head and gazed into the depths of the little girl's ice-cold eyes. Those were a pair of clear and emotionless eyes. They were like two deep, dry wells, without ripples or waves, expressionless like a wooden carving. For some reason, Sixth Zheng felt his heart twitch slightly, as if something had been triggered. When he wanted to take another look, he saw that the little girl's figure had already disappeared from the city gate tower. Everyone rushed into the city, and the soldiers dispatched by Lin Yongyi hurried to the small plaza. Everyone followed the flow into the city, except for two people who came against the flow. Arbor released several crow gold arrows with his crow-repeating crossbow, instantly sending several zombies bearing their fangs and brandishing their claws after the crowd flying. It was truly killing one person every 10 steps. His expression was as cold as frost. Everyone who passed by the crown prince and the little girl stopped in their tracks in a daze and looked at them blankly. Then they were pushed by the people behind them and ran with the flow. Second Do, Sixth Zheng, and the others were the last to enter the city gate. At the same time, under Lin Yongyi's loud shout, the city guards had already started turning the capstan in the opposite direction again, closing the heavy city gate once more. After Sixth Zheng dragged the panting Wuxia in and jumped through the city gates, the last zombie was shot out of the city by Arbor's crow-gold arrow, and the city gates slowly closed. Sixth Zheng panted slightly, and his somewhat dazed gaze met Arbor's expressionless little face. Little Six. Xiao Mu slowly lowered the arm that was holding the crow-repeating crossbow, her gaze fixated on the bewildered Sixth Zheng, and her lips curled into a smile that had been missing for a long time. Emolian was startled. She immediately stepped forward and reached out to grasp Arbor's slightly cold hand. Her scrutinizing gaze then fell on Sixth Zheng's face. Her looks were considered top-notch, and her skills were passable. However, Duan Yu Situ Yi, and even those two from the Qin family were all very outstanding people. Yet he had never seen his Jojo show such a tender and affectionate expression toward any of them. She even directly and intimately called him Little Sixth. What was going on with this gaze that clearly carried a trace of reminiscence? Emilienne was very certain that this was her darling's first time seeing this sixth young Master Zheng. However, what the hell was this inexplicable sense of familiarity between the two of them? This caused the Crown Prince's heart to fluctuate wildly, as if it was being scratched by a cat. He looked at sixth young Master Zheng, as if he was facing a great enemy. Crown Princess. Guifeng also glanced at Arbor in astonishment. Chapter 783. Arbor snapped out of her daze, and finally realized that her behavior was a bit strange. Little Six must have also thought that she was quite strange. She then collected her thoughts and switched to an expressionless face. Arbor nodded and said, "Time to sleep." Guifeng. Crown Princess, your ability to forcefully change the topic is improving. What time is it now? Yet you're still thinking about sleeping. Can you sleep? Your Highness. City Lord Lin anxiously ran over with his men and hastily saluted. Just as second young Master Do said, a large group of zombies has arrived 2 li outside the city. There are over 10,000 of them. Guifeng, take a team and go up the city gate tower to hold them off. The Crown Prince ordered decisively. Lightning, go back with the Crown Princess and protect the Crown Princess well. Lin Yongyi, pass down the order to gather all the mystic cultivators, body cultivators, superhumans, and so on in the city. Gather everyone who can fight near the city gate tower. The Crown Prince issued several orders before turning to Arbor and saying softly, Jojo, go sleep if you're tired. Everyone. Your Highness, this style of yours? Don't you think it's a bit strange? Arbor waved his small paw and really turned to return to his room. Lightning, along with a few shadow guards, naturally followed him like a shadow. Lin Yongyi and the others were tongue-tied, but they didn't know what to say. Lin Yongyi, you still need to send people to watch over the small plaza. Continue the inspection. Those who have no problems can enter the inner city, and transfer those who can fight to the city gate tower. The Crown Prince was referring to the 1,000-odd people from the Tent District who had just entered the city. Among them, there were also many small operations teams that could be put to use. Wenren Ningjing was the first to be unable to continue watching. She bit her lip and interrupted in displeasure. Your Highness ordered everyone to go up the city gate tower, but does your Crown Princess have special rights? That's right, everyone needs to participate in the battle. Your Crown Princess can even go back to her room to sleep? This was too strange. This Crown Prince was so overprotective that he didn't care about the consequences. It was an eye-opener. The woman beside Wenren Ningjing was called Kong Ro Miao. As one of the top 50 disciples of the Celestial Medicine Valley, she originally didn't have the qualifications to stand beside second young Master Do. However, she had a close relationship with the granddaughter of the old Valley Master, Wenren Ningjing, so she had this privilege. Kong Rumio was very obedient and protective of Wenren Ningjing. As long as Wenren Ningjing opened her mouth, Kong Rumio, this brain-dead fan, would be everywhere. At this moment, Kong Rumio crossed her arms and looked provocatively at Arbor, who was walking past her. She snorted. The Crown Princess turned to look at Kong Rumio and the others. She frowned and said, Where are the Crown Princess guards? Why didn't anyone subdue her when she provoked the Crown Princess? Guifeng. Prince Emo silently held his forehead. Lightning's group had already appeared the moment the Crown Princess finished speaking. 2 black-clothed youths immediately twisted Kong Rumio's arms and forced her to kneel on the ground. Ah! Kong Rumio shrieked. Wenren Ningjing also jumped in fright and reflexively took 2 steps back. What is the crime of offending the Crown Princess? Arbor asked impatiently. Kill. The expressions of the people from the Celestial Medicine Valley abruptly changed. Second young Master Do hastily stepped forward and saluted. Crown Princess, please calm your anger. This humble one's junior sister comes from the Celestial Medicine Valley and hasn't been restrained by the secular world since she was young. Please forgive this humble one, Crown Princess. Chapter 784. So long-winded. Arbor glared at second young Sir Do. As their eldest senior brother, you don't know how to restrain your disciples, and have the audacity to offend the crown princess. It's simply baffling. Everyone. Among your disciples, how many of them can be of use? Have them step forward. Second Do. Why did he feel that this crown princess was a bit adorable? Her manner of speech was straightforward and strange. Those of the crown princess's royal guards who have the guts to oppose the zombie army, step forward. Voila! The Hidden Night Pavilion's members, and the 100 hidden guards hidden in the shadows all jumped out. Their movements especially synchronized. Do you see that? This is the difference. The crown princess rolled her eyes at the people from Celestial Medicine Valley. Lin Yongyi and company were unexpectedly speechless. When they turned to look at the crown prince, they saw the crown prince holding his forehead as he stifled a chuckle. Cough. Guifeng coughed lightly to remind his crown prince. Prince Emma walked up with a grin to grasp Arbor's small hand. That's right, that's right. Do you see? The crown princess has several hundred subordinates who are willing to risk their lives for her to oppose the zombie army. You don't have anyone, so you naturally have to go yourselves. That's right. Not a single one of these Celestial Medicine Valley idiots understood her words. That was exactly what she meant. She had money and people. So why couldn't she first go catch up on sleep to make herself feel better? Why did she have to force herself to endure her unbearably sleepy body to fight the zombies over there? Was she stupid? Only the crown prince could understand her meaning. A bunch of idiots. She couldn't be bothered to waste her breath with them. Jojo, I'll send you back to your room to sleep. His darling must be unbearably sleepy, but even her overbearing appearance was just as adorable. That's right. These insensible things didn't know that his darling was still growing. How could she not properly grow up? The crown prince carried Arbor back to the side room and settled her down before leading the others back to the city gate tower. Half a kilometer away from Balon City, several prisoner carriages were frantically speeding forward. There were 5 to 6 people imprisoned in each prisoner carriage. There were men, women, old and young, and all of them were shrieking with terrified expressions. It wasn't horses that were pulling the carriage, but 2 giant hyenas. These hyenas ran much faster than horses, but they were very brave when they ran. The prison carriage kept shaking, causing the people in the cage to retch. In the beginning, there were more than a dozen of these prisoner carriages, but when they fled all the way to Balon City's entrance, there were only 4 to 5 of them left. The others had already overturned halfway, and were savagely devoured by the zombies that were chasing after them. These prisoners still felt like they were in a dream. Originally, they were all locked up in the prison. They didn't know what was going on, but when they opened their eyes, they found themselves on a fleeing prison cart, with a large group of zombies following closely behind. They were getting closer and closer to Balon City's city gate. They cried aloud and waved their arms vigorously from their cages to the rows of dark figures on the battlements for help. They didn't want to die. They hoped to be locked up in the prison again. Even if they had to eat pig swill every day for several years, it was still better than being inexplicably torn apart and eaten by these zombies. Your Highness. Second young Master Do walked to Emolien's side and whispered, I saw it on the way here. These people seem to be the bait for wild beasts. If this Do's guess isn't wrong, someone deliberately lured them to Balon City. It's the end of the month, so stop hiding and quickly vote. I'll give you more monthly votes tomorrow, moi. Chapter 785. At first, I thought it was extremely strange. Why would someone go to such great lengths to use some prisoners to lure a large number of zombies to Balon City? Second young Sir Do turned his head and glanced indifferently at Prince Mo. This Do only understood when this Do saw the crown prince for the first time. It turns out that these people were targeting Your Highness the Crown Prince. Prince Mo's icy lips pursed into a thin line as he nodded apathetically. Did Second Do discover anything else? Second Do nodded slightly. Where did these prisoners come from? If this Do's guess isn't wrong, these prisoners should have been transferred out from the Mo Kingdom capital's dungeon. The Supreme Court only imprisons high officials of third rank and above, as well as the king's relatives. Even if these people are imprisoned, no one dares to touch them in the slightest. Second Do analyzed. Therefore, this Do guesses that these prisoners were probably transferred out from the Ministry of Justice's dungeon. At this time, the Ministry of Justice is probably already in complete chaos. Second Do's guess wasn't wrong. At this time, the Minister of Justice, Mao Kongfu, was kneeling inside the great king's royal study. He had just reported that a large number of prisoners had escaped from the Ministry of Justice's dungeon, and he didn't even dare to breathe loudly. The great king of the Mo kingdom only felt his eyelids twitching madly, and he felt like something bad was about to happen. Unfortunately, the people he sent out hadn't returned yet. Someone stole your waist tag and released 100 prisoners without permission. The old king was so angry that he slapped the desk. This is such a big thing, and you didn't realize it until now. What are you doing? Mao Kongfu took off his official hat and held it in his hands as he knelt on the ground with his head bowed. Great king, it is this subject's dereliction of duty, but this subject requests the great king to give this subject a chance to redeem himself by meritorious service and escort these prisoners back. They've already escaped for so long. How are you going to escort them back? The commander of the royal guards, Hui Feng, led He Tian to the royal study in large strides and knelt on one knee in salute. Greetings to the great king. Come in. The old great king hurriedly waved at them. Hui Feng, He Tian, hurry up and bring 2,000 men to assist the Ministry of Justice. Capture all the escaped criminals. Great king. A dark shadow appeared in the great king's study. He was the closest secret guard to the great king, who had been sent out to gather information not long ago. How is it? How is it? Tell me quickly. The shadow guard bowed before replying. Your Majesty, the shadow guard is here. I've already sent people to investigate. We discovered that these escapees were all fleeing in the direction of Bailon City. Bastard! The old great king roared. Hui Feng, great king, your subordinate hasn't finished yet. The secret guard hurriedly added. Your subordinate has investigated. This group of people has alarmed many zombies within a radius of 50 kilometers. Currently, more than 10,000 zombies have gathered and are chasing after them to Bailon City. What? The old great king jumped up in shock, as if his butt had been roasted by fire. Wasn't Bailon City? Wasn't that where his royal son was? Royal father, royal father. The great king's son Mo Jiao had really come at the right time. He ran into the royal study with great acting and started bawling while hugging the table leg. Royal father, royal father. This subject heard that sixth royal brother has been surrounded by a large group of zombies in Bailon City. This subject requests royal father's permission to allocate 3,000 elite troops to this subject. This subject wants to personally head to Bailon City to rescue royal brother. Our royal father. Chapter 786. Scram! The great king gave the great king's son, Mo Jiao, a kick that sent him tumbling to the ground. The tear stains on his face had yet to dry as he looked up at his old father in a daze, unable to comprehend what was going on. The old great king picked up a ruler in passing and smashed it at Mo Jiao's back. Do you think that father doesn't know that you have a belly full of cunning plots? Do you think that your father is a dotard? The great king's son was stupefied. He had come over at the right time to express his attitude and express his excellent moral character of cherishing and protecting his younger brother. Yet he still incurred his old father's disdain? If this wasn't called dotard, then what was? Royal father, royal father. The old great king smacked the ruler twice on Mo Jiao's back. You came to father at this time to show off your cleverness. You even said that you didn't find someone to secretly release those people from the Ministry of Justice's prison? Mo Jiao, what did I do? Don't think that your royal father is dotard. That little scheme of yours? How could we not know? Why do you want to lead troops to Bailon City? Are you there to save your royal brother or to harm him? The Minister of Justice, Mao Kongfu, hurriedly crawled forward and reached out to stop the great king's rough ruler. Great king, this matter shouldn't have anything to do with the great king's son. I'm afraid this official's waist token was stolen by the infamous bandit Ding Ting Ding. What? The old great king turned around with the ruler in hand and stared sharply at Mao Kongfu. Didn't you say it just now? Mao Kongfu was speechless. He had indeed wanted to conceal this matter at first, because how would it be honorable if he revealed it? Ding Ting Ding had sent him a letter stating that he would steal his personal waist token within 24 hours. He had already put up a 360-degree defense without any blind spots. Who would have thought that when the time came, his waist token would disappear without a trace? Sob, sob, sob. He really didn't want to tell the great king that the waist tag was stolen by Ding Ting Ding. But now that he saw the great king angrily scolding the great king's son, if he continued to hide this matter, it would escalate into a conflict between father and son. Father. When the great king's son heard this, he immediately burst into tears and snot. I am really innocent. This son naturally wants to lead troops to Bailon City to rescue sixth brother. This son can swear to the heavens that this is absolutely not a lie. Did she take him for a fool? Even if he really wanted to find an opportunity to get rid of the crown prince, he couldn't possibly lead an army to kill the crown prince right under his father's nose. How dare you say you're not an old fool? What a fucking muddle-headed old man. The great king's son inwardly cursed endlessly. At this moment, he couldn't help but grimace from the pain and anger on his back from being beaten by the ruler. This damned old man. They were both sons. But the difference between the son of the legitimate wife and the son of a concubine was like heaven and earth. Ever since he was young, this old man had cared for the crown prince in every possible way, only believing and doting on him. His heart had already deviated to the northwest desert. It was only then that the old great king coughed awkwardly, knowing that he had wrongly blamed Mo Jiao. He tossed the ruler onto the ground and said resentfully to Gong Chong and beside him, Why haven't you summoned a physician from the royal physician building to examine the great king's son's injuries? Mo Jiao, father knows what you're thinking. The old great king's lips drooped as he coldly said, Let us tell you. The crown prince simply doesn't care about the things that you're so attached to. This is the most fundamental difference between the two of you. Mao Kongfu broke out in a cold sweat. He didn't expect that the old great king would actually lecture his eldest son in front of him today. You father and son quarrel with each other on a daily basis. So why don't you do it behind closed doors? As a subject, how could he endure hearing this kind of words? Chapter 787. Hui Feng He Tian. This subject is here. Immediately bring 2,000 men and head to Bailon City to rescue them. We solemnly obey the great king's order. The great king's son, Mo Jiao, failed to act obedient and was beaten up by his old father instead. Suppressing his belly full of anger, he quietly clenched his fists and left the royal study. The most fundamental difference. The most fundamental difference. They were all sons, but royal father only favored the crown prince and didn't favor the other sons. This was the most fundamental difference between them. Royal father simply didn't know that every time he mentioned the crown prince, his old eyes seemed to glow with pride. That was a gaze filled with extreme pride for this son of his. He said that the most fundamental difference between them and the crown prince was that they were wholeheartedly attached to power and position, while the crown prince didn't favor them at all. By holding the crown prince up so high, wasn't he afraid that if the crown prince were to fall one day, his body would shatter and his bones would be consigned to eternal damnation? Why was it that the crown prince was good in every way, while his other sons were as worthless as dog shit? Mo Jiao heavily punched the corridor pillar and left in a huff. Just as he walked out of the great king's palace, he saw the great king's second consort, Shu Quan, standing on the side of the road with a slight smile, waiting for him to come out under the moonlight. The great king's son, Mo Jiao's heart eased slightly, and he felt a bit better. With a smile on his face, he went up to support the great king's second consort's hand and asked, King consort, why have you come? This concubine couldn't feel at ease after waiting for his eldest highness to return for a long time. So this concubine simply came to the king's palace's entrance to wait for his highness. Sigh. The great king's son Imo Jiao sighed and said, King Consort, you were right. As expected, royal father wasn't willing to delegate military authority to me. He is very wary of me in his heart. I don't know if it's because second brother's previous matter has angered the great king's nerves. I think that other than sixth brother, he doesn't trust anyone else right now. The great king's second consort hastily stretched out her hand and secretly tugged at the great king's son's sleeve. How could such words be spouted so casually? They had just left the king's palace and were surrounded by the great king and queen's spies. Her husband was too reckless. The great king's consort sighed. She tidied her hair and went up on her tiptoes to fix the great king's collar. Your Highness, your face looks a bit pale. What's wrong? The great king's son swallowed his anger. He supported the great king's wife and said, We'll talk about it when we get back. All right. The great king's concubine nodded with a smile. She glanced at a dark corner from the corner of her eyes and saw a slender shadow flash by. A glint flashed across her eyes. Was it Queen Zhao's informant, Consort Zheng's, or another concubine's? It seemed that the news of her husband being reprimanded in the imperial study today would soon spread throughout the imperial court. The great king's son's estate wouldn't necessarily be any better off than the second prince's estate. Xu Quan sighed. She had already told him not to enter the palace at this time. But how could her husband listen to other people's advice? Sighed that he had wasted a great opportunity to sell a favor to the crown prince. If her husband had listened to her advice and secretly dispatched people to Bailon City to rescue his royal brother, after Bailon City's crisis had been resolved, he could then quietly leak the news and divulge this matter to the great king and the crown prince. How perfect would that be? Yet this boorish fellow only had eyes for that bit of military authority in the South Camp, and wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to win it over. How could the great king be willing to let him have his way? Just as the great king and his wife left the king's palace, someone went to the queen's central palace to pass on a message. Chapter 788. Sitting in front of the dressing mirror, Queen Zhao sneered. My son just got caught up in Bailon City's crisis, yet someone immediately couldn't sit still. Could it be that they think there's no one left in our Zhao family? Earlier, the queen had swiftly summoned her younger brother, Zhao Sheng, into the palace. At this moment, Zhao Sheng should have already brought his two sons to Bailon City to rescue the king. Green Mammy, who was gently massaging Her Majesty the Queen's shoulders, couldn't help but interject. Isn't that so? Your Majesty doesn't need to worry. His Highness the Crown Prince is very capable, so how could such a small matter stump him? On the other hand, that Crown Princess. Green Mammy paused, and Hushyang, who had just entered with a cup of tea, walked to the Queen's side with light steps. She docilely placed the teacup in front of the Queen, and silently stood behind her. Queen Zhao's brows creased slightly. Whenever Green Mammy talked about her daughter-in-law, she would have a headache, and that stoic face would pop up in her mind for no reason. Green Mammy glanced at the Queen out of the corner of her eye, and her lips curled into a secret smile as she continued. This old servant heard that the Crown Princess's child is very playful. The reason why the Crown Prince left for Bailon City without saying goodbye this time might be because the Crown Princess had whispered something into the Crown Prince's ear. Queen Zhao pursed her lips in displeasure. Last time, because the Crown Prince had accompanied that lass from the Qiao family back to her parental home, he had encountered an assassination attempt on the way back. This time, it was also because of that lass's willful and rash actions that the Crown Prince was in danger. Moreover, no matter how she looked at that stoic face, she just couldn't bring herself to like it. When she recalled how Consort Chung had brought her daughters-in-law over to pay respects to her 2 days ago, she became even more envious of other families' daughters-in-law. That eldest lass of the Xu family, Xu Quan, had been well-educated and well-mannered since childhood, and she had also watched her grow up. Now that she had a son and 2 daughters, her belly was quite capable. Secondary Consort Zhang, who was by the great king's son's side, also looked reasonable and had a concubine's daughter. Vice Consort Wu, who had been taken in less than half a year ago, was the concubine's daughter Wuxia, who was ranked second in the Wu family. When she came to pay her respects, she was already pregnant. Perhaps she was about to give birth to Consort Cheng's fifth grandson. This made Queen Zhao's eyes burn with envy. Compared to her two disappointing sons, Queen Zhao sighed repeatedly. Her youngest son was already 13 years old. He was like a wild horse that had broken free of its reins. He was always out in the wild, and was nowhere to be seen. The big one was even more ridiculous. In his early 20s he had never been close to women. Oh, he was close now. But the one closest to him was a little stoic. As the crown prince, he had no children. Wasn't this just throwing his weakness to the enemy? It was no wonder that the imperial censors were so long-winded. Queen Zhao set down the ivory finer in annoyance, and cast a sidelong glance at Green Mammy. Between Commandery Princess Ian and the future crown princess, who do you think is more suitable for His Highness? It's just that the crown princess is rather young, and has grown up among the common folk since she was young, so her personality is a bit more casual. Elderly Nanny Huaxian, who had lifted the curtain and walked to the queen's side with a chuckle. Huaxian very naturally took the finer that the queen had placed in front of the dressing mirror, and gently combed the queen's hair. Commandery Princess Ian has been raised by Her Majesty the Queen Dowager since she was young, so there's naturally nothing to say about her etiquette. However, oh my, just say what you want to say. The queen cast a glance at elderly Nanny Huaxian's hesitant expression and couldn't resist urging. There aren't any outsiders here, so what can't you say? Yes, then this old servant will speak frankly. Chapter 789. After all, Commandery Princess Ian's parents died when she was young. Speaking of which, she is also a person with a bitter fate. Elderly Nanny Huaxian docilely combed Her Majesty the Queen's long hair as she commented softly, "If it weren't for Her Majesty the Queen Dowager taking pity on her, as the descendant of a martyr, and conferring the title of Commandery Princess on her behalf, she wouldn't have been able to survive this long." At this time, her days in the Marquis of Su-An's estate are probably not easy. Although her uncle was bestowed the title of Marquis of Su, and by His Majesty's grace. However, although the Marquis of Su-An's estate has many heirs, they are all good-for-nothings. Queen Zhao nodded. On the other hand, Green Mammy pouted indignantly when the two people weren't paying attention. Now that you mention it, that's true. Ian is also not a very auspicious person. How could she be worthy of her outstanding son? Queen Zhao was pondering that her son was not young anymore, yet he was still childless. Seeing how small that little stoic was, she reckoned that her son would need to raise her for another 2 years before they could consummate their marriage. Could it be that she had to let her precious son watch over her for these 2 years? How could she do that? She couldn't bear to. Moreover, she desperately wanted to hold a grandchild. Regardless of whether it was a legitimate grandchild or a concubine's grandchild, it couldn't be better if she could give her a grandchild to hold. As a result, Queen Zhao secretly racked her brains to take in 2 secondary consorts for her precious son. Look at how Consort Cheng's son already had 2 secondary consorts. Her own son was the crown prince of the Great Emo Kingdom, second only to the king. So why couldn't he have a secondary consort? Prince Emo thought that his mother had already stopped, but he didn't expect that this pig of a teammate would continue to secretly drag on behind his legs. The eldest miss of the Mu family's eldest branch, Mu Qianqian, is also not bad. Her small face is snow white, and her smile is also sweet. Unlike that expressionless stoic face, Her Majesty the Queen muttered to herself, "It's just that she didn't conform to etiquette at the palace banquet last time. I'll just have to teach her the rules in the future." Ian is also not bad. The eminent monk of the Honghai Temple had even read her fortune, saying that she would have many children and many blessings. Although she didn't seem to have a good life in the first half of her life, she might be a good wife who could bring good fortune to her husband. With her status as a concubine, it wouldn't be a loss of face to the Empress Dowager. The more Queen Zhao spoke, the more spirited she became. Shu family's 4th young lady, Shu Hui, is 18 this year. The last time I saw her, she was as pretty as a flower bud. The two girls from the Dou family were also not bad. They were the famous twin sisters in the capital. The one from the Duan clan is not bad, and the one from the Qin clan. Oh my empress. Old Nanny Huaxian put down the fine-toothed comb and looked at the queen helplessly. Even if those girls you mentioned were as beautiful as fairies, it's useless. Your Highness doesn't like any of them. The queen immediately snorted like a deflated balloon. Why is my son so stubborn? That little stoic was so tiny. What exactly was so good about her? Your Highness, you've seen how much His Highness likes the crown princess. Huaxian whispered into the queen's ear, her eyes flickering with the wisdom of an old nanny. We can't cause a rift with His Highness because of this. The affection between mother and son. The green mammy still wanted to follow, but she had no choice but to halt her steps after Huaxian cast her a cold glance from the corner of her eye. Moreover, Her Majesty the Empress Dowager's heart aches for that commandery Princess Ian. Do you think it's a good idea to place her beside the Crown Prince? His Highness and Commandery Princess Ian have known each other since they were young. There hasn't been much between them for so many years. Yet you insist on getting involved with them. Won't His Highness be disgusted? Chapter 790. Nonsense. Queen Zhao retorted indignantly. I see that childy Anne's eyes light up every time she sees our son, and she can't shift her gaze away. How can you say that it's nothing? Oh my queen consort. When your family's His Highness goes out, he looks like a jade tree facing the wind. Which girl's eyes don't shine when they see him? Huaxian said with her mouth twitching. That stoic face doesn't light up. Speaking of this, the queen got angry. She just felt that that little stoic didn't value her precious son enough. She kept a stoic face in front of her husband all day long, and her gaze never lingered on her son. She treated her son like a radish instead of a vegetable. It was simply infuriating. Huaxian. That after all this, it was just that the mother-in-law felt that her daughter-in-law didn't value her son enough. Elderly Nanny Huaxian could completely understand Queen Zhao's mentality. Indeed, such an outstanding person like His Highness would attract pursuers wherever he went. The Crown Princess's attitude was improper. Cough. But the Crown Princess was still young. Perhaps she hadn't been enlightened yet. Your Majesty, this old servant advises you not to meddle in the young couple's affairs. Don't even think about that secondary consort selection. Look at how much His Highness cherishes your stoic-faced daughter-in-law. Queen Zhao abruptly glared at elderly Nanny Huaxian, Huxiang, who was following beside her. That nanny, why did you also call her stoic-faced? Cough cough, this old servant's meaning is, if you go and start some secondary consort selection, His Highness definitely won't like it. When the time comes and he kicks up a fuss with you, the one who will lose face is still you. Elderly Nanny Huaxian coughed twice as she explained. Truly, a grown son can't be controlled by his mother. Queen Zhao went to sleep in a huff. Wasn't she just feeling sorry for her precious son? Her son actually didn't appreciate it. Huxiang secretly pursed her lips into a smile, and quickly served Queen Zhao to rest. After a good night's sleep in arbor, the first glimmer of dawn had already appeared when she opened her eyes. She couldn't help but sigh when she touched her lower body. No wonder she couldn't open her eyes at night, and was unbearably exhausted. It turned out that her first period since her rebirth had come. She had already prepared a clean cotton cloth a while ago, so she was not caught off guard this time. However, his body was still very tired, and his head was still a little dizzy. The lower part of his body was wet, and it was not very comfortable. He got up and fiddled around for a while, then put on a clean cotton cloth and changed his clothes. Murmurs came from outside the door. Arbor quickly ran to the door, put his hand on the door, and muttered with a red face, "You're not allowed to come in." "Jojo, you're awake?" Emo Lien was surprised when she was stopped from opening the door. "What's wrong?" "It's okay." Arbor still didn't let go of the door and shouted, "Ask Xiao Yao to come in." "You forgot that Xiao Yao stayed in the Emo Kingdom capital and didn't come with us." Emo Lien was at a loss, unable to understand what was going on with her little miss. Then call any maid in." After saying that, Arbor thought again. Right now, the maids and guards were probably busy elsewhere, So she said dejectedly, forget it, forget it. I'll do it myself. Her small hand moved past the door. Just as she turned around, she heard a soft sound from behind the door. Prince Emo had already pushed open the door. Jojo. Emo Lien saw her complexion at a glance. Why is your face so pale? Jojo, are you not feeling well? He picked her up and walked to the bed. Do you want to sleep a while more? Arbor was so angry that she wanted to bite him. She covered his eyes with one hand and shouted, You're not allowed to look, not allowed to look. Chapter 791. Her bed hadn't been properly tidied up yet. She was about to die from embarrassment. Hateful brat. Hateful brat, hateful brat. Even though he wasn't allowed to look, the Crown Prince's sharp gaze still caught sight of it. He was momentarily dazed as he lowered his head to look at his little lady. It's fine, Jojo. Don't be scared. I'll go find an old nanny to teach you. Arbor bit his chin. Hateful brat. You're not allowed to find anyone. Bring me clean bedsheets and blankets from the cabinet. A moment later, the Crown Prince helped the little lady clean the bed. He foolishly looked at the little lady, who was lying on the bed, and turning her head away from him. Jojo, do you want to eat something? I'll go prepare it for you. How's the situation outside? Arbor expressionlessly asked with his back facing a certain someone. Oh, the city is under siege. How can you be so calm when you're under siege? You. Arbor turned to glare at him in bewilderment. Is the city really under siege? MHM, it's under siege. There are a lot of zombies blocking Balon City's city gate. There are many more zombies than the ones we encountered in Qinghe Town back then. Arbor really wanted to whip something and beat this joker to death. Your tone is so relaxed. Do you look like you're under siege and in dire straits? Then what should we do? It's fine. Lin Yongi is here. Emo Lien's words made Arbor roll his eyes in exasperation. Are you sure City Lord Lin isn't secretly crying in a corner right now? Jojo, wait a moment. I'll cook some porridge for you. Drink some before you sleep. Emo Lien hurried out after saying that. Arbor didn't even have time to call out to him. After a while, Xiaomu was still in a daze when she felt Emo Lien pick her up. His body was very warm, causing her originally icy limbs to involuntarily crawl over on their own accord. She hugged his waist and buried her small face in his embrace as she nuzzled against him. He stroked her forehead with his hand and fed her some porridge before stuffing a warm hand warmer into her arms. He softly muttered a few words into her ear, but Arbor didn't hear him clearly and didn't know when he left. When she woke up, she felt much more refreshed. She raised her hand to touch the hand warmer on her stomach. It was still warm, so Emo Lien reckoned that he had changed the charcoal pies midway. She got out of bed, changed her clothes, opened the door, took a look. The entire city lord's estate was silent. Lightning's toozes to princesses to His Majesty's tea. His Highness has instructed that you should drink some hot porridge after you wake up. Please wait a moment. Xiaomu was also a bit hungry. Emo Lien had fed her more than half a bowl of porridge in the morning, so her stomach felt a bit empty right now. Teat. S2s too. They're all at the city gate tower? A portion of the injured in the city have mutated. His Majesty has brought some people to patrol the inner city. Lightning shook her head and said, City Lord Lin has ordered people to carry out the city defense cannons. The current situation is still under control. Little Master, His Majesty said that if you feel unwell, you should rest a bit more. I'm fine. Arbor found a hairband and casually tied her long hair. Let's go out and take a look. Relaxing the meridians and moving around was also beneficial to one's health. Let's go to the city gate tower. She wanted to see if the entire Balon city was really completely surrounded by zombies. Chapter 792. When Arbor appeared at the foot of the city gate tower in high spirits, she immediately received many silent looks mixed with quite a few secret eye rolls. Kong Rumia was currently feeding medicine to a young mystic cultivator, who had practically exhausted all of his mystic energy. When she looked up, she saw that Crown Princess leisurely walking over, as if she was taking a stroll in her own backyard. Kong Rumio's face immediately darkened, and she was furious. Other people were risking their lives to fight the zombies on the city gate tower. Yet this crown princess slept all the way until the afternoon, and came to patrol while carrying a hand warmer. They had been fighting the zombies for an entire day and night. The crown princess's leisurely appearance was too deserving of a beating. When Ren Ningjing creased her brows and gently tugged at Kong Rumio, it couldn't be helped. The crown prince covered the sky with one hand in Balon City, and wanted to protect his dainty little wife with all his might. Even if other people found him an eyesore, they couldn't say anything. Arbor climbed up the city gate tower and pattered over to the city wall to take a look. His small mouth immediately formed an O shape. So many zombies? When City Lord Lin turned around and saw this crown princess the Great, he almost knelt down. He wiped his sweat and said, "Crown princess, why have you come? The wind on the city gate tower is strong. How about you go down first?" When Ren Ningjing saw the city lord's fawning face, she promptly turned her face away, unable to continue watching. This city lord Lin normally looked like a man, but in front of the crown princess he became a wretch, which made her a bit angry. Ren Ningjing reached out and helped several weak mystic cultivators to the side. At times like this, mystic cultivators' long-range attacks could thoroughly display their strengths. There were about 500 mystic cultivators gathered in the city, and they went into battle one after another, bombarding the densely packed zombies below the city wall. Arbor stood next to the defensive wall and looked down with rapt attention. Sure enough, an army of over 10,000 zombies was climbing the wall bravely. Severed limbs filled the gaps in the city walls, and a long string of corpse puppets hung from the city gates. Everyone was pushing and shoving. Under City Lord Lin's command, the cannons fired and landed in the middle of the zombie horde, immediately blasting a dozen or so zombies into pieces. Don't you find it strange? After fighting for a day and a night, why hasn't the number of corpse puppets decreased? 10,000 corpse puppets. If they fought desperately, there would be a time when they would be killed. Arbor's words stunned Lin Yongyi. His face stiffened as he turned to look at the young crown princess. He had never thought of this question before. Could it be that this siege was premeditated by someone who had secretly transported large batches of zombies into Balon City in an unending stream? Arbor thought more than City Lord Lin. Inexplicably, she thought of the underground village. Those neurotic demonic cultivators seemed to take pleasure in killing the corpse puppets. Could it be that the underground village wasn't just a base for cultivating demonic cultivators? What is its real underground operation? Raising zombies? Arbor's chilly eyes narrowed, and she turned around to walk down the city gate tower. Kong Rumio sneered. Do you really think this is your own back garden? Just going through the motions and patrolling? Arbor turned a deaf ear to this mocking voice. She didn't have time to deal with these idiots right now. She had to find the crown prince as soon as possible and inform him of her suspicions. None of these people understood her, so she couldn't be bothered to waste her breath on them. After descending the city gate tower, she heard cries of alarm coming from a small plaza nearby. It's Physician Feng? Be careful. Physician Feng has mutated. Ah. Chapter 793. Previously, after Feng Manyan and Xiang Qin had blended in with the crowd, they had been hiding in the crowd in the small plaza. 300 to 400 guards from the city lord's estate were standing guard outside the small plaza. It wasn't until dawn that several physicians from Celestial Medicine Valley came over to examine the bodies of the people in the Shed district. Soon, the small batches of people were all finished with their examinations and were taken away from the small plaza. The people in the small plaza gradually decreased. Feng Manyan felt very uncomfortable, her whole body alternating between hot and cold. She shrunk inside her filthy cloak and hugged her knees, involuntarily burying her head. Meanwhile, Xiang Qin had been secretly watching her miss the entire time, and she asked worriedly, "Miss, did the black rank pill take effect? How do you feel right now?" Not good, not good, not good at all. Her whole body was very uncomfortable. Feng Manyan's heart was even filled with boundless panic. Why didn't that black rank pill, which was used to save her life, seem to have any effect? It couldn't be, she must be scaring herself. How could the life-saving pill that master gave her not be able to save her? Creak creak eh? Why was her neck so stiff? When she twisted her neck, she could even hear the creaking sound of her bones rotating. Little Mississippi, Xiangqin turned around to look at her, and she was nearly scared out of her wits. Heavens! Why were Mrs. Eyeballs slightly protruding? And her neck was also bulging with veins that resembled thin vines. It looked very frightening. Feng Manyan turned around, and her protruding eyes stared fixedly at Xiangqin beside her. She called out, "Xiangqin." Her nose suddenly twitched, and she abruptly extended a pair of claws. In front of Xiangqin, the joints of that pair of hands suddenly twisted, and a section of her fingernails also grew out. She had clearly mutated. This frightened Xiangqin so much that she jumped up high and scrambled backwards, crying out tragically, "Miss!" On the side, a woman carrying a child came face to face with Feng Manyan, who had suddenly pounced forward, and she immediately revealed a horrified expression. "Physician Feng? It's Physician Feng? Physician Feng is actually mixed in with our crowd? Heavens! Her appearance! Be careful, Physician Feng has mutated." Ha! The woman carrying the child was rather nimble, and she rolled away on the spot, evading Feng Manyan's claw. On the other hand, a thin and frail man beside her was not as lucky as the woman. Caught off guard, Feng Manyan tore off a piece of flesh from his arm, causing him to grimace in pain as he cried out loudly. The city lord's estate's guards, who had acted promptly upon hearing the news, surrounded them in full armor. They flung a lasso as thick as the rim of a bowl at Feng Manyan and that thin and weak man. At this time, Feng Manyan had already completely finished the process of living body mutation. She widened her bulging, bloodshot eyes, and with a furious roar, she dodged that lasso at an abnormally fast speed. The skinny man wasn't so lucky, and his head was caught in the noose of a few city lord's mansion guards. With a tug and pull, the thin and weak man was dragged to the ground by the lasso. Under the combined efforts of several city lord's mansion guards, he was dragged all the way across the square. The guard raised his sword and chopped off the thin man's head, causing the people to scream in horror. Physician Feng, this jinx, clearly knew that she had been clawed by a zombie earlier, yet she still mixed in with the crowd and took someone else's life for nothing. Even if Feng Manyan saw the disdainful and hateful gazes of the women nearby, she wouldn't be able to comprehend it. Chapter 794. Because she had already completely lost the mind and soul that belonged to a human. Roar! Feng Manyan let out an inhuman roar from the depths of her throat. The two guards from the city lord's estate flung out the lassos in their hands and cooperated appropriately, trapping Feng Manyan from both sides. The two of them simultaneously berated her and tightened the lassos from both sides. In the blink of an eye, the two lassos were stretched taut, tightly trapping Feng Manyan in the center. Feng Manyan roared and suddenly exerted her strength, jumping up abruptly. She swung her left and right arms while howling like a ghost. Following her vigorous flinging of her arms, the two guards from the city lord's estate staggered forward a few steps, due to Feng Manyan's immense strength. Xiangqin shrunk to the side in fright, not even daring to breathe loudly. She tightly covered her mouth with both hands as she gazed at this kind of miss in horror. All of a sudden, several guards from the city lord's estate were flung away heavily by Feng Manyan's immense strength. Bang! The guards from the city lord's estate crashed heavily onto the ground, feeling dizzy as if they were dizzy from the fall. Junior Sister Feng? At this time, the two Celestial Medicine Valley disciples finally realized that this mutated zombie was actually their Celestial Medicine Valley's junior sister Feng. The two people's expressions turned unsightly on the spot. Celestial Medicine Valley's disciples actually mutated into zombies. This kind of thing absolutely wouldn't be honorable if it got out. Why did junior sister Feng become like this? She was still fine when she left Celestial Medicine Valley for practical training. But now junior sister Feng actually mutated into a zombie? How could people accept this kind of thing? While the Celestial Medicine Valley disciples were at a loss out of fear, They heard Feng Manyun's fierce roar as she suddenly pounced toward the outside of the small plaza. And at this time, Arbor just happened to come down from the city gate tower and pass by the small plaza. Suddenly, she saw a zombie wrapped in a tattered cloak dashing out. She didn't think too much about it at once and hurled a burst of mystic energy in that direction. Crown Princess, wait a minute! The two Celestial Medicine Valley disciples suddenly cried out in alarm as their expressions changed drastically. Arbor turned a deaf ear to the cries of the two disciples. Boundless profound energy once again gathered in his hand and fiercely slapped towards the corpse puppet. The pure-colored mystic energy crashed heavily against Feng Manyun's head like raging waves, sending her flying on the spot. Bang! Feng Manyun crashed heavily onto the ground, her bones creaking all over. Like a maggot, she curled her limbs and crawled on the ground. When Arbor's gaze fell on her, his eyes gradually turned cold. So it turned out to be that Feng Manyun, who had escaped after drugging the farm? As for how she ended up in such a miserable state, Arbor didn't want to know at all. Was there a need for her to waste her time on an unrelated person? Crown Princess, please show mercy. The two Celestial Medicine Valley disciples' expressions abruptly changed as they dashed madly in Feng Manyun's direction. Unfortunately, before they could reach Feng Manyun, they watched as the Crown Princess summoned a black feral from her conscious pool. With an abnormally apathetic expression, she promptly made a prompt decision and smashed the feral down heavily on Feng Manyun's head. Roar! Feng Manyun let out an inhuman howl. That head that could be considered intact was instantly smashed into smithereens by this feral, and there was no way to save her. Crown Princess, that's our Celestial Medicine Valley's disciple. The two Celestial Medicine Valley disciples glared fixedly at Arbor with reddened eyes. Chapter 795. It was as if the little lady in front of them was their mortal enemy, who had killed their loved ones. So what? Arbor swept them a cold glance, his expression grim and wooden without the slightest change. Celestial Medicine Valley disciples also don't have special privileges. That apathetic and calm voice stated a fact. Could it be that I didn't kill a zombie? Before the two Celestial Medicine Valley disciples could speak, Arbor coldly interrupted them. If it's a zombie, then it must be killed. Could it be that I'm still keeping it for the new year? We have black rank pills that can treat junior sister Feng. The two Celestial Medicine Valley disciples roared indignantly. Who told you to kill her? Junior Martial Sister Feng's life has been ruined in your hands just like that. Don't you feel ashamed? I don't feel it. Arbor glanced at them apathetically before turning to leave. Despicable. You simply treat human life like grass. The two Celestial Medicine Valley disciples glared at the Crown Princess resentfully, their fists clenched tightly. Why does Celestial Medicine Valley have brainless disciples like you? Arbor shook his head as he looked at them disappointedly. Who are you calling brainless? The two Celestial Medicine Valley disciples were angered half to death as they glared furiously at Arbor. Arbor already couldn't be bothered to talk to them anymore, so he turned around and coldly tossed them a sentence. You guys are truly too lacking compared to Wuxia Valley. A bunch of brainless people fishing for compliments. How were they worthy of being on par with Wuxia Valley? They should just hide from the world early and save themselves from making a spectacle of themselves. Although you are the Crown Princess and have a lofty status, we won't allow you to slander our Celestial Medicine Valley like this. How was Celestial Medicine Valley inferior to Wuxia Valley? Wuxia Valley had vanished without a trace these past few years. They weren't worthy of being on par with Celestial Medicine Valley. The two Celestial Medicine Valley disciples flew into a rage, simply about to go crazy from the stoic face in front of them. Arbor glanced at them coldly. If it weren't for your Celestial Medicine Valleys, people being inefficient and dilly-dallying, how could you have harmed other people after all this time without discovering that Feng Manyun had mutated alive? That's right. The woman holding the child from before, who had nearly been scratched by Feng Manyun's mutation, nodded repeatedly in support upon hearing this. It could be said that the amount of anger the two Celestial Medicine Valley disciples had suffered in their entire lives wasn't as much as today. Look at how the Crown Princess was criticizing them, as if the entire celestial medical valley was worthless. Someone carry Feng Manyun's corpse out and cremate it. Arbor ordered expressionlessly. No. All of the Celestial Medicine Valley's disciples, even if they die on the path of training, must return to the Celestial Medicine Valley in one piece. The Celestial Medicine Valley's disciple voiced out to stop her. There's no need to trouble the Crown Princess. We will deal with Junior Sister's corpse ourselves. The City Lord's mansion's guards and the crowd all looked at each other in dismay. They only felt that these two Celestial Medicine Valley's disciples' thoughts were too strange. Although the Crown Princess looked quite young, her decisiveness in handling matters was far from what those two short-sighted Celestial Medicine Valley disciples could compare to. No matter if it was the guards or the crowd, everyone simultaneously stood on the Crown Princess's side at this moment. They couldn't resist criticizing the Celestial Medicine Valley's disciples at the same time, as they shared a common enemy. Are the two of you sick? The Crown Princess already said that this physician Feng had mutated into a zombie. She's a zombie. Of course we have to cremate her. Aren't you afraid that she'll come back to life midway and gnaw the two of you to death? I think these two people's brains are spoiled. Chapter 796. Don't waste your breath on them. Burn! The crowd shouted with surging emotions, and they promptly pushed aside the two Celestial Medicine Valley disciples with unsightly expressions. Several city lords' estates' royal guards carried Feng Manyun to the cremation site to dispose of the corpse without a second word. Since that's the case, there's no need for us two brothers to continue staying here to invite humiliation. As for the matter of the examination, leave it to your almighty Crown Prince Consort. The two Celestial Medicine Valley disciples angrily flicked their sleeves and left, leaving behind the indignant crowd. Arbor shook her head, remaining speechless for a while. Two grown men in their 30s to 40s actually had such immature behavior, mixing business and personal matters together. Because of personal matters, he suddenly threw away his work and quit. His behavior was really shameful. Seeing that there were less than 100 people left in the small plaza, Arbor had them line up one by one to inspect their bodies. After the inspection, the commoners were naturally led into the city by the City Lord's estate's guards. Because of the living body mutation, City Lord Lin acted as if he was facing a great enemy. He ordered people to demarcate 5 areas in the inner city and temporarily gather all the commoners there. Most of them were the elderly, the weak, women and children. As for the able-bodied youths, those who could fight and resist were practically all dispatched to the city gates to help. Arbor turned around and walked into the city. Have you contacted the Crown Prince? Lightning shook his head as he followed behind her. Not yet. Arbor nodded slightly. Then she would just stroll around the inner city. Even if she couldn't bump into the Crown Prince, she should be able to see him when she returned to the city gates. Besides Arbor and Lightning, no one else could be seen on the entire street. As they walked along the desolate street, Arbor would occasionally stop and raise the crow-repeating crossbow in her hand to kill 1 or 2 zombies hiding behind the walls. Her movements were so swift and precise that even Lightning, who was following closely behind her, couldn't help but click his tongue in amazement. The Crown Princess practically didn't need to aim. This level of proficiency and control in killing zombies didn't seem to be something that could be practiced overnight. Arbor pondered continuously in her mind. The speed at which the corpse puppets mutated in this life was clearly much faster than in the previous life. In her previous life, it was only when she was 18 years old that ordinary patients would undergo a living mutation. However, in this life, it had happened 3 years earlier. If that was the case, according to the accelerated time, it wouldn't take long for the water source to be infected. Crown Princess, please be careful. Don't get hurt, not even an ordinary cut. Lightning followed closely behind Arbor, worriedly reminding him. It's okay, Lightning. Arbor faintly shook his head, a cold light flashing in his eyes. Do you think they mutated because they were injured? Isn't that the case? Lightning was taken aback. She turned to look at Arbor. Arbor didn't say anything. He just looked up at the dark sky. It seemed like there was going to be another storm tonight. Thinking back to his previous life, from the corpse transformation to the corpse puppet, Arbor had a vague idea of what was going on. Everyone thought that this was just a natural disaster. However, at this moment, Xiaomu increasingly felt that perhaps this was a premeditated man-made disaster. Crown Princess. A shadow guard suddenly appeared beside Lightning and bowed. This subordinate has found traces of His Highness the Crown Prince. However, His Highness the Crown Prince's group seems to have encountered a little trouble. Arbor abruptly turned his head. Chapter 797. Emolien's group had indeed run into a bit of trouble. They had originally received a report, and had gone to a temple in the south of the city, to clean up the corpse puppets inside. Who would have thought that they had only seen a few corpse puppets, and had dealt with them quite quickly. However, when they came out, they ran into a crazy woman who, without saying a word, tangled with Emolien, and insisted on capturing him alive, to present him to their family's Luoxia princess. The group of people fought, and the crazy woman took out an offensive spirit weapon, covering Emolien's group inside. That offensive spirit weapon was like an upside-down transparent bowl, forming a small spiritual domain, and was actually somewhat powerful. That woman only needed to control it, and a few wisps of spirit power would fill the entire small spiritual domain with berserk lightning power. When Arbor and Lightning came over, they just happened to see this scantily clad woman standing outside the small spiritual domain, threatening with a ferocious face. "Are you going to obey or not? You man, how can you be so unappreciative? It's not like I want you to climb a mountain of swords or plunge into a sea of fire. I just want you to marry our Luoxia princess. Hurry up and say something. Hurry up. Why don't you go die?" Huifeng angrily scolded, his small eyes glancing at the crown prince beside him. Where did this crazy woman come from? Actually saying that she wanted their crown prince to marry. What Luoxia princess? He had never heard of her. Bah! Even if he had heard of her, so what? Even if he had heard of her, it was still not enough for his master to marry. His Highness was also really strange, not reacting at all, calmly sitting inside the small spiritual domain like an old monk sitting still and counting mushrooms. Several wisps of faint flames were burning inside the small spiritual domain. "What is she doing?" Arbor asked crisply. "Jojo." Emolien's eyes lit up, and with a slight movement of her finger, the translucent spiritual domain around her suddenly dissipated. The woman controlling the offensive spirit weapon was shocked, suddenly feeling pain in her finger. Looking again, the spirit weapon that was originally on her finger flew into the man's palm with a whoosh. "Ah, my defensive thunder shield," the woman exclaimed, staring blankly as the ring was clamped between the man's two fingers. "How dare you?" the woman shrieked, but before she could reprimand him, she suddenly felt a sharp pain in her conscience, and spat out a mouthful of blood. No, the faint mental connection between him and the spirit artifact had actually been erased. Yes, how could this be? The woman began to tremble all over. She had begged the princess for a very long time before the princess bestowed it to her. It had only been 2 days since he got it, and it was already taken away by someone else. Even after the spiritual tool had recognized its master, the spiritual connection could still be erased? How could she know that for a spirit tool master, erasing the connection between a spirit tool and its master was a simple matter? Prince Mo's silence earlier was only because he was moving stealthily and had no time to deal with this person. Now that it was done, he took the spirit artifact and used his bare hands to roast it, then walked to Arbor's side and held her small hand, waving it in front of her eyes. "For you to play with." Arbor reached out to take it, but saw that the ring had been newly forged by Prince Mo, and now it was completely black, covered with a faint silver light. Prince Mo held her small hand, and the ring that was originally in Arbor's hand was about to disperse its spiritual light, but now quietly hid its brilliance in his hand. "This spirit artifact is not bad. It can cover 15 people at once." Chapter 798. It'll form a tiny spirit domain. Jojo. As long as you imbue a wisp of mystic energy into it, the spirit domain will be filled with violent lightning energy. It'll be able to strike those zombies into ashes in a matter of minutes. Isn't that quite fun? Arbor fiddled with the ring in his hand. It is quite fun. Then how many times can it be used? Arbor fiddled with it for a while before putting the tiny ring on his finger. At most, it can be used continuously for about 10 times. Huifeng wordlessly averted his gaze. Cough, cough, cough. The woman who had lost her spiritual artifact glared resentfully at the muttering couple on the other end. A mocking expression appeared on her face. Stinky man, did you think that you could give the defensive thunder barrier to that slut next to you just because you used some despicable methods to forcefully erase my mental connection to it? Don't let your imagination run wild. In this kind of lower star domain, not just any Tom, Dick, or Harry can comprehend the power of the 5 spirits and use it to control a spiritual artifact. A green vine abruptly darted out of Arbor's sleeve. The vine transformed into a small emerald green claw and flew to the woman's face in an instant. Without any explanation, it slapped her so hard that 2 of her teeth fell out. Bam! The woman knelt on the ground with a dumbfounded expression, her body involuntarily trembling. How was this possible? She was a level 2 spiritual master, but she was actually slapped to the ground by an unknown little slut from the lower star domain? I'll kill you. An extremely thin stream of water suddenly darted out of the woman's hand toward Arbor. The light of a firefly dares to compete with the brilliance of the sun and moon. Arbor coldly glanced at that person. With a quick flick of his finger, the stream of water instantly condensed into an ice blade and stabbed toward the woman's chest with a whoosh. Ah! The woman rolled on the ground several times, and her eyes almost froze in horror. In that instant, the ice blade instantly split into 9 and shot out with whooshes, all of them stabbing the dozen or so members of the team next to her. Impossible! How could such a powerful water spirit master appear in the lower star field? The woman stared at Arbor as if she had seen a ghost. I'll let you have a taste of the defensive thunder barrier. Xiaomu sneered. She activated her spiritual weapon, and a translucent light barrier immediately enveloped the woman and her operation team members. Crackle! Lightning bolts smashed down with a loud bang. The woman trembled, and her mouth was wide open. She stared at Arbor in disbelief. How could this be? When she first took control of this spiritual weapon, it took her at least 2 days and 1 night to familiarize herself with it. She even had to endure a lot of lightning before she was able to form a contract with this spiritual weapon with such sincerity that it could split open metal and stone. But now that little girl? The woman's intuition told her that she had made a mistake. Today, she had kicked an iron plate. Arbor withdrew his small hand, and the translucent light shield disappeared in the blink of an eye. The woman heaved a sigh of relief, and her tone softened as she hastily said, "Little girl, we're from the Rakshasa Ghost sect. Today, we were blind to have misjudged these 2 esteemed guests." Before she could finish speaking, the little girl waved her hand, and the light shield covered the group again. Obliterate. Huifeng's eyelids twitched, and he wordlessly turned his face away. The woman and her team looked up in horror, only to see hundreds and thousands of lightning bolts interweaving into the shape of a Chinese character. Amidst their screams, they slashed down. See you tomorrow. Chapter 799. The Rakshasa Ghost sect group was instantly scared out of their wits, and the woman's intestines almost turned green with regret. She didn't expect that a little girl, who didn't seem to have any lethality, would be able to control a spirit weapon so skillfully in minutes. Even with her abilities, she might not be able to make the defensive thunder barrier exhibit such great effects. From this, it could be seen how frightening this little girl was. Lightning filled the entire small spiritual domain and weaved into the shape of a Chinese character, pressing down on everyone's heads step by step. The woman was the first to see a member's arm being swallowed by lightning. Then, she widened her eyes in horror as she watched the web-like lightning cut through her head. Arbor put away the defensive thunder barrier and turned the ring on her finger. Not bad. This spirit weapon is rather interesting. Hui Feng and the others silently glanced at their crown princess, then simultaneously looked back at the severed limbs strewn all over the ground and shuddered. Didn't they already know the extent of the crown prince consort's cruelty? What kind of place is the Rakshasa ghost sect? Arbor rubbed the ring on her finger. This ring had the same effect as the defensive ring on her finger. If one didn't look closely, they wouldn't be able to tell the difference. The Rakshasa ghost sect is a relatively secretive sect on Seacone planet. Prince Emo grasped Arbor's hand and turned to walk toward the city gate. They do all kinds of business, from selling illicit salt, escorting bodyguards, murdering people for their goods, assassinating officials. As long as it's a job that can earn them money, they'll take it all. Prince Emo explained aloofly. They were once wiped out by a righteous sect 10 years ago. They've vanished without a trace these past few years, and haven't appeared much. Arbor looked up and glanced at the crown prince. Who is the Rakshasa princess? Hui Feng and the others had actually heard of the Rakshasa princess before, and the Hidden Night Pavilion had even done quite a bit of research on her. The Rakshasa princess is their sect master. According to rumors, the Rakshasa princess is a dainty lady with unparalleled beauty, Hui Feng interrupted. Her hobby is to collect all kinds of handsome men. That Rakshasa princess also uses people as vessels to suck their essence and mystic energy? The little girl asked with a curious blink. Our dear Hui Feng suddenly couldn't fucking continue. Crown princess, can't you see that the crown prince is glaring at me? How could this subordinate continue to speak? This subordinate does not dare to say such words that are not suitable for children. Is Princess Raksha the sister of Granny Witch from Coitus faction? Granny Witch also likes different men, sucking their vitality. Arbor had an attitude of wanting to get to the bottom of things. Emolienne was speechless. They're not sisters. They just have the same interest in handsome men. But what's so good about men? Why do they like different kinds of beautiful men so much? Arbor murmured. Could it be some kind of disease? His Highness the Crown Prince and his male subordinates looked at each other, and their mouths twitched. Although the Crown Princess was ferocious, she was strangely adorable. Ahem, Crown Princess. Didn't you say earlier that you had something to discuss with the Crown Prince? Lightning hastily changed this strange topic and reminded Arbor. Oh, that's right. Arbor nodded. Emolienne, let's find a place to sit down, and I'll tell you in detail. Okay. Emolienne breathed a sigh of relief and pursed her thin lips into a smile. Chapter 800. If the little girl asked him again, what exactly does the Rakshasa princess like about beautiful men? Emolienne didn't mind personally carrying the little fellow and demonstrating that the two casually entered an abandoned house, found a relatively clean room, and sat down at the table. Arbor used his mystic sense to open his inner world, and took out 2 steaming bowls of soup from the all-purpose food box. He handed one bowl to Emolienne, and held the other bowl for himself. Emolienne had been busy the whole day and definitely didn't eat properly. This bowl of soup was for him to fill his stomach first. Hurry and drink. Blackbone chicken soup is very nourishing. We'll talk after you finish. The little fellow handed him a spoon, and held the soup in his hands, drinking it in small sips. Crown Prince Emo was extremely moved. As long as his little emperor darling treated him slightly better, Crown Prince Emo felt that he would definitely be moved by the heavens and the earth. Thus, he shattered a bit more of the stoic baby's layers of ice. The Crown Prince's goal was to defrost his baby as much as possible and warm her heart. Amen, it would be best if she smiled at him often. That would be perfect. Arbor looked at him in bewilderment, his bright black eyes staring at him. Why aren't you drinking? It's delicious. Amen, amen. Prince Emo hastily drank a mouthful, but he almost scalded himself. Are you an idiot? Arbor rolled his eyes and reached out to take out a handkerchief to wipe the corner of his mouth. This soup is still warm, it's very hot. Jojo, you even carry hot soup with you. If this treatment was placed in peacetime, it would be especially blissful to be able to drink a mouthful of hot soup at any time when one went out for training. Amen, hurry and finish it. Arbor watched him finish the soup, and then took out 3 dishes and 2 bowls of rice from the food box. He handed 1 bowl to him. Eat. We'll talk while we eat. Prince Emo was instantly dumbfounded. Jojo, you really cooked rice and brought it out? No. I have a lunchbox with a lot of food in it, but I didn't cook it. Arbor stuffed a mouthful of rice into his mouth and said casually, let's talk business. According to my observation, every time there is a large-scale outbreak of zombies, there was a bird about the size of Qing Wan that would fly across the sky. Perhaps there was more than one. Maybe there are a few of them, but they are flying high, so we might not be able to notice them. Doesn't it look a bit like a nighthawk? That kind of bird? You noticed it too. Arbor chewed a mouthful of rice and nodded vigorously. That's right, that's right. I call them nightcaw birds. Prince Mo's expression turned slightly solemn. He put down the spoon in his hand and said, this kind of nightcaw bird's flying speed isn't any slower than the blue phoenix's. Jojo, come on. Crown Prince Emo pulled Xiaomu up and walked to the room next door. Suddenly, with a flick of his finger, he abruptly released a giant bird carcass from his inner world, which practically filled more than half of the room. Arbor's eyes suddenly brightened. Yes, it's this kind of bird. Heavens, so Emolian was actually that sharp. She had already shot and killed a nightcaw bird at some point in time, and hid it in her inner world to study it for a while. Back in Kwoto village, on the night of the zombie outbreak, she had vaguely seen this kind of nightcaw bird. At that time, a thought flashed through her mind, but she couldn't grasp the fragments of memory. It wasn't until last night when she saw the bird's afterimage flying past from the window that she suddenly woke up. Chapter 801. She had seen this bird in her past life as well. Emolian, do you know what I'm thinking? Arbor held Emolian's arm tightly, her expression changing slightly. I know, Jojo. You must be thinking. This disaster is not a natural disaster, but a man-made one. Emolian picked up Arbor and put the nightcaw bird's body back into his inner world. He turned to the original room and put her in front of the dining table. Arbor looked at him with sparkling eyes. She loved talking to Emolian the most. Every time she said the first half of a sentence, Emolian would know what she was going to say next. It was effortless. Moreover, Emolian was too smart, and his observation skills were very strong. She only noticed the nightcaw bird's existence because of the experience she had accumulated in her past life. Emolian, on the other hand, only noticed it because of his meticulous observation. This man was so smart that people did not know what to say. If I'm not wrong, these nightcaw birds only spread the mutated poison at specific times. Arbor quickly said, maybe these nightcaw birds are not omnipotent. You see, they have only appeared twice in the past 7 years. Emolian also continued, there's also another possibility, which is that a certain organization behind this has been researching the evolution of toxins for as long as 7 to 8 years. Before the poison evolves, they will not send out the nightcaw birds to spread the poison powder again. Arbor's eyes narrowed, and she reached out her finger to point in circles on the table. When the mutated poison is spread, the poison powder will mix with the rainwater and flow into the ground when there is a storm. Therefore, the corpses that have just been buried will have a reaction. The mutated poison will make the corpses not stiff, and will even start to have the ability to move slowly. But at the same time, when it is absorbed by a living person, it can also cause some people to mutate. But this mutation is developing in a good way. Some of the people who absorb the mutated poison will mutate into people with special abilities. Emolian lowered his head slightly in thought, and raised his hand to look at it. Even I was not spared. My body has produced a special medicinal effect. Emolian's eyes gradually merged with Arbor's. The two of them spoke at the same time and quickly said, usually, those who can mutate and become people with special abilities should be ordinary people. Mystic cultivators and body cultivators who have special abilities at the same time are only isolated cases. So this poison is actually a poison that targets ordinary people. What was this? Survival of the fittest? The mutated poison could mutate some people into people with special abilities, while ordinary people without special abilities would die in large numbers at the hands of the zombies. In the end, the remaining ones should be mutants with special abilities. There would no longer be ordinary people in this world. Other than superhumans, there would only be mystic cultivators, body cultivators, and demonic cultivators. Are they crazy? Arbor was furious. He slammed the table, and the bowl of rice bounced. What does the existence of ordinary people do to them? Why can't you give others a chance to survive? Jojo. Emolien hugged her tightly in her arms. The little girl angrily roared in agitation. Do ordinary people deserve to die? Without mystic energy, no special abilities, no mystic beasts, no mystic weapons, nothing. Do poor people like them not have the right to continue living? Chapter 802. In her previous life, before the age of 16, she was this kind of ordinary person. A person who couldn't be any more ordinary. Her father, Xiao Zhongbang, was also a cripple whose mystic meridians were crippled in her previous life. When she was 9 years old, her family sought refuge in the Emo Kingdom capital's Qiao family. How much contempt did they suffer? How difficult was it to survive? These matters were vivid in her mind, and she didn't dare to forget a single bit. Why did they have to do this? Why couldn't they give ordinary people a chance to live? This damned organization manipulated all ordinary people in the palm of their hand. What exactly did they want to do? Did they want to completely change the world? Their poison has evolved. Arbor clutched Emolien's sleeve tightly as he said each word. That's right. The poison powder already doesn't only mutate corpses. It can enter the blood through ordinary wounds and cause living people to turn into zombies. Arbor said with an icy gaze. That was why she said those words to Lightning. Those people who mutated yesterday definitely didn't mutate, because they were injured. The main reason was that the nocturnal coot bird's poison powder had entered their wounds and blood, causing their bodies to mutate again. This dark organization behind the scenes was truly terrifying. They could actually develop such a terrifying poison for the human body. What was their goal? Did they want the world to be destroyed? What benefits would they gain from the destruction of humanity? First stage, mutating corpses. Second stage, mutating living bodies. No, they're about to enter the third stage. Water source mutation. These people acted faster than in her previous life. Arbor turned to Emolien with a solemn expression and said, Every fortification must open up a new water reservoir and bring in underground water. Every water storage point needs to be guarded day and night. Jojo, do you think they'll extend their evil claws to water sources in the following third stage? What's faster and fiercer than polluting water sources? In her previous life, the nocturnal coot birds had spread poison powder to rivers and lakes. According to her experience, one would turn into a zombie after drinking water. This kind of thing was about to happen before her eyes. She didn't know if Emolien had been in northern Emo in her previous life. In any case, the construction of the fortifications in her previous life simply wasn't that fast. Basically, after the zombie disaster, the symbol of national power completely fell from power, and there was no distinction between countries anymore. At that time, the entire Seacombe planet was in chaos, abnormally tragic, and chaos was everywhere. It wasn't until 2 years later that the construction of the defensive fortifications was started by people who crawled and rolled on the ground. In the later stages of the zombie apocalypse, when she was about 18 or 19 years old, finding a water source had become a fatal and terrifying problem. It was already very hard to find a clean water source on the entire Seacombe planet. Therefore, people were frantically searching for the secret realm. Yes, the mystic realm. There might be a clean water source in the Immortals' Grotto Heaven, or the Land of Heritage, set up by the expert. What people yearned for the most were naturally formed secret realms. This kind of secret realm was like a paradise. It had its own natural law, and everything in the world was created to form a complete ecological world. However, this kind of secret realm required thousands, or tens of thousands of years to form. Once it was found, it would naturally be a fierce struggle for it. At that time, some of her teammates in the team of 20 had died of thirst. Chapter 803. If only she had a bowl of clear water back then. How great would that have been? She wouldn't have become all alone. That surviving in a hopeless situation was really tough. Watching her teammates die one by her side, her mentality would gradually become distorted. She still remembered. It should have been a flourishing May, but because of the destruction of large areas of vegetation, the withered leaves were as cold as the 12th lunar month. She could clearly see that among the withered yellow leaves, an 18-year-old black-clothed youth, with a long sword on his back, was walking towards her. His face was handsome, but his eyes were like a desert, expressionless when he looked at people or things. Who's that person? Arbor used a dirty handkerchief to wipe off the bloodstains from the hunt just now. Oh, a newcomer called Little Six. The young girl fiddled with a palm-sized sweet potato from the fire. She reached out to take it, but it was so hot that she couldn't stop pinching her fingers and covering her ears. I'll share half with you, little Chiao. No need, you eat it. Arbor stuffed the dirty handkerchief into her waist, her gaze following the black-clothed youth. This person doesn't have a surname? The young girl peeled the sweet potato and giggled. No, he's like a sawed-off gourd. No matter how others ask, he won't say what his surname is. He just said he's called Little Six. But his skills are not bad. Jojo, what's wrong? Emolian immediately noticed that the young girl's mood was not right. He hurriedly reached out to hug her and lightly patted her on the back. Arbor retracted her wandering thoughts and looked at him intently. She said softly, Emolian, in my heart there's always been a dream. I'll tell you later. Arbor pursed her lips and patted his chest. Finish the food, don't waste it. Okay. Emolian didn't ask any more questions. She reached out and gently pinched her little chin. She said casually, Jojo, no matter what happens, you just have to remember that I won't leave you. Xiaomu's beady black eyes rolled, and an idea flashed through her eyes. She picked up the rice bowl with her small hands and vigorously nodded her small head. Jojo, you said that I'm not an ordinary person. Why would my ability mutate? Emolian asked Arbor with a puzzled expression as she ate 2 mouthfuls of rice. Arbor looked at him speechlessly. You might be a weirdo. Emolian's phoenix eyes abruptly turned round. His baby was joking with him. This joke was really not funny at all. The two of them quickly finished their meal. Arbor threw the bowls and chopsticks into his inner world and pulled him out. Your Highness. Huifeng, do you want some buns? Arbor tossed him a small bag of meat buns. Huifeng's eyes suddenly brightened, and he naturally nodded repeatedly. My, his crown princess. She was simply a living bodhisattva who saved people from suffering. They had been tossing and turning for an entire day and night, yet they hadn't had the time to eat a single bite. These buns were still piping hot, so there simply couldn't be any more loving. Emolian pursed her lips. Look at this bunch of brats. They had only starved for a night, yet they acted as if she had mistreated them. Emolian, there's an endless stream of those zombies outside no matter how we fight. Emolian held her small hand and led her outside. Someone must have deliberately lured them to Balon City. It's possible that it's that underground village. The two spoke in unison, and they couldn't help but smile as they looked at each other. Chapter 804. That underground village is very strange. It's so close to the Emo Kingdom capital, so there must be something strange about it. Emolian said softly. From the looks of it now, it might be an underground place where zombies are secretly raised. Could that underground village be related to the organization behind it? Emolian shook her head. We don't know about that yet. But this organization spent 7 to 8 years just to develop the evolution poison powder, which means that it should have existed for a very long time. Are they perverts? Why must they play a bloody game of survival of the fittest for normal people? Emolian patted her little head. Good girl, don't think so much. You've already thought enough today. I'll send you back to rest, okay? No, I've already thought of a way to deal with those zombies outside the city. Arbor hugged Emolian with 2 small hands and tilted her head. But I need your cooperation. Emolian looked at her in amusement. Okay, tell me. I'll cooperate however you need me to. As he spoke, he lowered his head to search for her little mouth for a kiss. Arbor's little face swiftly flushed, and she snuck a glance at Hui Feng and the others, only to see them fighting over the buns far away. Not this cooperation. Xiao Mu angrily blocked the man's thin lips with her hand. Emolian pulled down her little hand and directly kissed it twice. Her heart inexplicably softened when his thin lips grazed her little hand. Oh, then this is it. This, or this. He kissed, touched, and licked. Xiao Mu forcefully pulled back her small hand and angrily cast the scoundrel a glance. You're neither. It's that you need to show off your skills at the city gate later. Kiss at the city gate. Emolian hugged her and floated forward with a tap of his feet. Isn't that too high profile? Scram. Arbor was so angry that she wished for nothing more than to bite him. You know little Sixjing? MHM. Wasn't this weird topic changed a little too abruptly? Xiao Mu was caught off guard and was tricked into revealing the truth by a certain two-faced guy. Alarm bells rang in Emolian's mind. Not good. Her baby really knew little Sixjing? When did they meet? And where did they meet? That was impossible. Could it be that this little Sixjing knew his Bao Bao before him? How old would that be? 3 or 4 years old? 5 or 6 years old? Fuck. Weren't they childhood sweethearts and innocent playmates? Get lost. When the two of them approached the city gate, they heard a commotion. Wu Shaoan blocked in front of Sixjing and was currently cursing Wenren Ningjing furiously. Get lost, woman. No. Sixjing's hand was cut. He's going to mutate soon. We have to kill him immediately. Wu Shaoan was so angry that his eyes turned red. Bullshit. How did the 6th young master get injured? What do you think? If it weren't for a certain capable person who insisted on shooting with a bow and arrow, and almost accidentally injuring a teammate, would the 6th young master get injured while saving someone? Wenren Ningjing's face reddened, and then she said angrily, no matter what, Sixjing must die to prevent more people from being infected. Who dares to touch little 6th? Arbor shouted angrily. Emolian couldn't stop her in time, and only saw the little fellow dash over like a fleeing rabbit. For a moment, her emotions were all jumbled up, and her gaze turned sharp as she stared at 6th young Master Zheng. What are you all crowding around here for? Arbor pushed aside the sword-wielding Wenren Ningjing like a female leopard protecting her cub. Scram. Chapter 805. Mo Kingdom Capital Guanlan City, Jade Hue Parlor. It was not yet night, but business was already flourishing. The girls were greeting and sending off guests at the entrance, bustling with noise and excitement as they sang and danced in celebration. Zhao Qiran was the only one seeking peace and quiet. She was sitting on a swing by the pavilion in the rear courtyard, her thoughts reverberating back and forth. Miss Ran, Miss Ran. A maidservant hurried over and bowed to her. Zhao Qiran's eyes brightened slightly. Is the Qin Estate's 2nd young master here? The maidservant shook her head at her and said cautiously, yes, it's the Duan Estate's eldest young master and 3rd young master inviting you over to sit. Mama Li wants you to prepare. Zhao Qiran's bright eyes dimmed bit by bit. At the same time, in an incomparably luxurious room on the 3rd floor of the Jade Hue Parlor, a red-clothed girl was lying on the bed, revealing her fair and graceful thighs. She was gently waving a silk fan in one hand. Princess, Snake Beauty is here. Let her in. This princess's voice was innately babyish. The moment she opened her mouth, it was soft and limp, as if a kitten's claws were scratching someone. Snake Beauty greets Princess. Snake Beauty swayed her body as she entered, acting as if she was going to kneel on the ground. All right. The princess waved her fan and glared irritably at her. After the village was destroyed, where did you wander off to? Only now did you know to come back? It's really a long story to tell. Snake Beauty swayed her waist and casually sat down on the round stool in front of the bed. She reached out to pick up a cup of hot tea and took a sip. Princess, this subordinate almost lost her life to come back to see you. Snake Beauty said pitifully as she wiped the corners of her eyes with her sleeve. Then, she rambled on, exaggerating how Emolian and Arbor had barged into the underground village. She also added how she had narrowly escaped with her life, how she had been trapped in the underground waters after escaping, and how much effort she had expended to come back. After this long-winded rambling, an hour had already passed. The Raksha princess, on the other hand, was completely engrossed in his story. Sigh, if I had known earlier, I would have gone to the underground village earlier. I could have gone on an adventure with you. I've experienced so many strange things. Sigh. Princess Luosha raised her slender hand and waved the silk fan in her hand. Snake. When the Snake Beauty heard this nickname, her ears couldn't help but twitch. In fact, even though she was disguised as an adorable little Baldy, she was still disdained by Arbor. After parting ways with Arbor at Balon City's gate, she even went to take on a private job midway, before returning to see the Raksha princess. However, she obviously wouldn't tell Princess Luosha about this. Alas, the Raksha princess sighed sadly. Snake, I recently accepted a business deal, but without you by my side to advise me, the business isn't going so well. The Snake Beauty revealed a smile that was comparable to a flower. Princess, what kind of big business did you take on? Someone placed an order in our Raksha Ghost sect, and paid an astronomical price to buy Northern Prince Mo's life. Princess Luosha waved her fan, and bent her long and fair leg. For this reason, I even specially dispatched someone to invite Thief Sage to take action. Snake Beauty's smile was as gorgeous as a mountain flower. Is that so? Then Princess, you must have succeeded. Not really. Princess Luosha sighed softly. Until now, those little cuties of mine haven't even been able to enter Balon City's city gate. Chapter 806. Sigh. Without being able to get close to that Northern Prince Mo, what's the point of talking about buying my life? Princess Luosha touched her smooth skin and said softly, the most despicable thing is that I actually didn't see that legendary thief sage this time. Originally, I was secretly hiding in a dark place to take a look at him. Princess Luosha said indignantly. Unfortunately, I didn't even see a single feather. The Snake Beauty's mouth twitched and she coughed awkwardly. Sigh, you're making my heart uncomfortable. Princess Luosha suddenly stood up and crossed her long white legs. She looked at the Snake Beauty with a smile. I heard that thief sage Ding Ting Ding is a pretty boy who looks pretty good. Moreover, he's a rarely seen playboy. Princess Luosha threw the handkerchief in her hand at the Snake Beauty's dumbfounded face. Hee hee. Princess Luosha's enchanting laughter sounded. Snake Air, look at your dazed face. Me. I like to conquer those playboys the most. The more playful they are, the more I like them, hee hee. Princess, can you stop being so coquettish? Snake Beauty coughed. Your topic is a bit off topic. Weren't we talking about the assassination of Mo Kingdom's crown prince? Why are we talking about Ding Ting Ding now? Do you think there's a playboy in this world that I haven't conquered? Princess Luosha's curved eyebrows knitted together. She seemed to have thought of something and sighed deeply. That enemy. Snake Beauty's eyebrows trembled fiercely. She lowered her head and didn't say anything. Snake Air, do you think a woman like me isn't beautiful? Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Princess, you're the most beautiful, elegant, and feminine woman I've ever seen. Snake Beauty didn't even blink when she said this. Hee. Princess Luosha laughed sweetly. Snake Air, I like your glib little mouth the most. This subordinate's admiration for Princess is also like the endless Wanghai Sea domain. Hee. Snake Beauty made Princess Luosha laugh. She swung her long legs and laughed. Snake Air, you're the best. The moment you came back, you brushed away all my depression from the past few days. The Snake Beauty confidently revealed her most perfect smile. Princess Luosha reached out her soft hand and touched her own face. But I'm so beautiful. But I still can't conquer the cult master's licentious heart. Princess, have you ever thought that perhaps you and the cult leader aren't suited for each other? The Snake Beauty cautiously reminded her. How could that be? Princess Luosha immediately pouted and said angrily, I'm the sect master of the Luosha Ghost sect, and he's the cult master of the demonic sect. We're both black-hearted goods. We're a perfect match. Snake Beauty. That's just what you think. What do you think my cult master is doing now? Princess Raksha rolled around on the bed while hugging her blanket. Don't be reckless, princess. It's too painful to watch. The snake beauty ridiculed in her heart, but she still maintained a perfect smile on the surface. Didn't you just receive 2 beautiful servants? Don't mention it. They're so weak that they're already dead. The snake beauty was speechless. I don't think we have anything in common to talk about. Knock knock. A sound came from the door. Come in. The Raksha princess tugged at the thin robe that had fallen to her shoulders and looked at the door with seductive eyes. Princess, it's not good. The small team you sent to Balon City has all died, and their life lamps have all shattered. What? Princess Raksha sat up on the bed at once. Chapter 807. The Raksha princess's beautiful eyes gradually darkened. Go transfer the life lantern miniature over. And no life lantern miniature. You don't have it. The Raksha princess raised her voice slightly as she stared deeply at the trembling woman standing at the door. Useless thing, scram. The Raksha princess flicked her sleeve forcefully, and a majestic wave of mystic energy jolted the woman at the door, sending her flying in a split second. She crashed onto the ground and spat out 2 mouthfuls of blood. Sheer, don't you think this matter is fishy? The people I sent were basically all level 7 or level 8 mystic cultivators, and there was even a level 2 spiritual cultivator mixed in with them. Isn't it strange that someone could annihilate this kind of team without a trace, and not even a trace of their life soul miniature was sent back? The Raksha princess wouldn't have imagined that the reason her team could be annihilated was all thanks to that defensive thunder barrier spirit weapon she had sent out. It cleanly and efficiently annihilated everyone, not even leaving behind a trace of their life soul. Before leaving, I even gave that idiot a spirit weapon, the Raksha princess said angrily. I don't know if this spirit weapon dropped in Balon City. Sheer, how about you go look for it for me? That spirit weapon of hers was a spirit weapon with relatively strong attack power, so she couldn't bear to lose it just like that. Fortunately, it was a spirit weapon, so it was completely useless to normal people or mystic cultivators if they picked it up. I'm willing to serve you. The snake beauty bowed in greeting, a faint glint flitting through her eyes. She was still thinking about how to find an opportunity to meet that infuriating little stoic again. She didn't expect that the opportunity would be delivered to her like this. It simply couldn't be any more perfect. The Raksha princess tossed her a palm-sized stone. This item can send spirit weapon waves within a radius of 5 li. Princess, then I'll be leaving. Take care of yourself. The snake beauty caught the stone and giggled at the Raksha princess. The Raksha princess shook her coquettish wrist at her. Sheer, forget it if you really can't find it. Remember to come back earlier. As she said this, she even threw the snake beauty a coquettish glance, which made the snake beauty choke on her saliva and flee from the room like a fleeing rabbit. Heavens, the princess's scheming gaze was too disgusting. It was truly an eyesore. The snake beauty's body involuntarily shuddered, and a stoic face inexplicably appeared before her. She tossed that spirit-testing stone in her hand, and her lips curled into an indifferent smile. Little stoic, I really don't believe it. I really don't believe I can't handle you, brat. What's that right face doing right now? The corners of the snake beauty's mouth curled into a smile. Then, her silhouette suddenly flashed and disappeared in the air. At this time, Xiao Mu was standing in front of little Sixth Zheng, her icy gaze fixed on Wenren Ningjing, who had opened her mouth to rebuke him. Wenren Ningjing retreated a few steps in fright from Xiao Mu's gaze, which immediately infuriated her brain-dead fan, Kong Rumio. This crown princess was abusing her power to bully people again. She was simply using her connections to intimidate others. Kong Rumio immediately jogged to Wenren Ningjing's side and hooked her arm around Wenren Ningjing's. She glared at Arbor as if they shared a common enemy. What are you doing? Did our little Jing say anything wrong? Six Jing's hand was cut. He's about to mutate and become a zombie. If you don't restrain him now, can you restrain him if he loses control of his mind? Chapter 808. Don't talk to them. The two Celestial Medicine Valley physicians, who had previously quarreled with Arbor, walked over gloomily. Deal with them immediately. I'll see who dares to make a move. Arbor blocked their way, his black eyes revealing traces of impatience. These ants from Celestial Medicine Valley were muddle-headed, and especially good at stirring up trouble. They were truly too annoying. Miss Jing. At this time, a loud shout was heard, and Xiangqin stumbled out from a dark corner. She threw herself before Wenren Ningjing with an aggrieved expression and wailed, "Miss Jing, please uphold justice for our miss." "Who are you?" Wenren Ningjing didn't recognize this woman at all. On the other hand, the two Celestial Medicine Valley physicians asked hesitantly, "Are you Junior Sister Fang's personal maidservant?" Xiangqin nodded vigorously and wailed, "I beg Miss Jing to uphold justice for our miss." Those two Celestial Medicine Valley physicians sighed and turned to tell Wenren Ningjing, "Miss, this is Junior Sister Feng Manyun's maidservant. I just happened to be reporting this matter to Miss Jing. Junior Sister Feng had just mutated, and she was immediately dealt with by the Crown Princess." One of the physicians gazed coldly at Arbor. "Crown Princess, you also said before that no one has special privileges. As long as it's a mutated corpse, they should be dealt with." Arbor's frosty gaze landed on that physician. "I see that you people from Celestial Medicine Valley not only have problems with your brains, but you're also blind. What did you say?" That physician was so infuriated that his face flushed red. He was a grown man in his 30s, yet he was actually scolded like a dog by a little lady. Just the thought of it infuriated him. "You keep saying that little sixth has mutated. If you're not blind, then what are you?" Arbor stepped aside, and the youth's tall and straight figure appeared in front of everyone. "The Crown Princess is right." Wu Xiaoin nodded heavily. "Little sixth is completely fine, yet you just have to talk about mutated. If you're not blind, then what are you?" The Celestial Medicine Valley physicians scoffed. "That's only temporary." "That's right." Wenren Ningjing looked irritably at Arbor with a frosty expression. "Sixth young Master Zheng merely hasn't mutated for the time being. But you've also seen that all of the injured have undergone a living mutation. This fact doesn't allow you to quibble." Arbor didn't wait for her to finish and suddenly attacked. A green vine drilled out of her sleeve and coiled around Wenren Ningjing's neck. In the next second, Wenren Ningjing was dragged to her side. This move could be said to be beyond everyone's expectations. "Ah!" Kong Rumio exclaimed. "What are you doing?" The dagger in Arbor's hand was pressed against Wenren Ningjing's cheek, his voice as cold as ice on a snowy night. "Whether it will mutate or not, you will know after experiencing it yourself." "Ah!" Wenren Ningjing and Kong Rumio screamed in unison. Wenren Ningjing couldn't help but shudder all over. She felt that incomparably frigid dagger stick to her skin like a viper, abruptly slicing open a shallow wound on the side of her chin. "Your Highness Crown Princess, please stay your hand." Second young Master Do, who had come after hearing the news, hastily walked up to them, his pupils constricting as he looked at Arbor. Swish! The green vine coiled around Wenren Ningjing's neck noiselessly withdrew. Arbor twisted Wenren Ningjing's arm with one hand, and abruptly pushed her into second young Master Do's embrace. Wenren Ningjing staggered a few steps before falling onto second Do. Chapter 809. You'd best keep an eye on them. Don't test my patience again and again. Arbor glared at second Do, and the others with an impatient expression. Second young Master Do inexplicably felt that the little girl in front of him was slightly hostile towards him. But why? Ahem ahem ahem. Junior Marshal's sister Wenren's coughs beside him attracted his attention. Second Do lowered his gaze and looked at his Junior Marshal sister with a slightly complicated expression. His Junior Marshal sister had been so easily frightened by the Crown Princess that her entire body was trembling, and her footsteps were unsteady. He reached out to support her and said, "Junior Marshal sister, it's fine. Relax, don't be too nervous." Tears gushed out of Wenren Ningjing's eyes, and she wept endlessly. "Senior Marshal brother, I won't turn into a zombie, right? Senior Marshal brother. You won't. It should be fine." The Crown Princess was cold-hearted. But she wasn't someone who would kill indiscriminately. Although this little girl was young, she handled matters with great propriety, and was much more shrewd and ruthless than junior martial sister Wenren. Second Do looked back at Arbor with a complicated expression, but he saw that the latter didn't even glance at them out of the corner of his eye, as he led little Sixth Zheng's group away. However, Kong Rumio was furious, and she scuttled to Arbor with her sword. "Stop right there. Junior martial sister Kong, come back." Second young master Do shouted. Kong Rumio's sword-wielding hand slightly stiffened, and she turned around with an expression of disbelief. She looked at second young master Do with an aggrieved expression and said, "Senior martial brother, she was the one who injured people. She was the one who injured Miss Jing. I'm telling you to come back." No matter how good second Do's temper was, it was almost worn out by Kong Rumio. If Wenren Ningjing hadn't been on good terms with her, Kong Rumio wouldn't have been worthy of standing by his side with her character and medical skills. She simply didn't know what was good for her. She clearly knew that she wasn't the crown princess match, yet she still insisted on throwing her life away. Second young master Do was a smart person, and smart people disdained associating with a group of idiots. Kong Rumio indignantly withdrew her sword. Her gaze met with Arbor's cold gaze, and she inexplicably shuddered. Second Do was now a little regretful. Why had he agreed to his master's request to bring this group of burdens out to practice medicine and gain experience? He was the last disciple of the Old Valley Master. Wenren Ningjing was the Old Valley Master's granddaughter. According to reason, Wenren Ningjing was his martial niece. Usually, she didn't need him to take care of her. However, because Wenren Ningjing was Elder De Yuan's only disciple, she was nominally his junior sister of the same generation. Martial uncle De Yuan had given Wenren Ningjing to him for this experiential training. Under the doting of the Valley Master and Elder De Yuan, junior sister Wenren had developed an innocent and unruly character. Although junior sister Wenren's temper had toned down quite a bit after coming out to train, Miss Jing, who was used to being flattered by others, would definitely not be able to hold back her anger once she suffered a setback in reality. How troublesome. Second Do narrowed his eyes and sighed inwardly. On the surface, he had no choice but to put on a caring expression. He reached out to pat Wenren Ningjing's trembling body and softly comforted her. "Junior sister, don't worry. The crown princess is probably just joking with you." Wenren Ningjing gritted her teeth. Her small face flushed red with anger. Who would make such a joke? "If the wound mutates, I'll die." The wound on her chin was actually very shallow, and there were no longer any bloodstains seeping out. However, she couldn't stand being frightened and kept feeling that the wound would mutate, so she felt uneasy and itchy all over. Chapter 8:10. Junior sister. It's already been about an hour since 6th young Master Zheng was injured. He's completely fine, which means that you'll also be fine. Compared to the shrewd, ruthless, and decisive crown princess, Wenren Ningjing was more like an immature little girl. Her intelligence and judgment were far inferior to the crown princess's. The problem was that Wenren Ningjing was 3 to 4 years older than the crown princess, yet she was so naive. Sigh. Second young master Do sighed helplessly. He patted Wenren Ningjing's shoulder and handed her a small box of ointment. "Junior sister, apply the ointment. You'll know in a bit that nothing will happen." Wenren Ningjing accepted the ointment dubiously and nodded tearfully. On the other end, Wu Xiaoan grinned and had just given his thanks. Then, he saw the crown princess grumpily roll her eyes at 6th young Master Zheng. "Are you an idiot?" Arbor grumpily tossed a medicine bottle into 6th young Master Zheng's hand. "You don't even know how to resist when someone wants to dispose of you. Many thanks for saving me," 6th young Master Zheng blankly replied. It wasn't that he didn't resist, but that he was momentarily dazed by this crown princess. What a strange feeling. For the first time, little 6th Zheng, who was usually not very fond of interacting with women, felt that this bright-eyed crown prince consort's affectionate way of calling him little 6th Z actually made sense. What a foolish brat. Prince Emma walked to his Jojo's side in a bad mood and pulled her small hand. This brat was very strange. Even with his network of contacts, he actually didn't know when this brat had met Jojo. Prince Emma glanced at little sixth young Master Zheng, and then pulled his Jojo up the city gate tower. At this time, Arbor's attention was already on the densely packed zombies howling endlessly outside the city gate tower. City Lord Lin, who hadn't closed his eyes for an entire day and night, ran over to the young couple with a head full of sweat. Your Highness, what do we do now? Our mystic cultivators are almost exhausted. If this stalemate continues, the cannons won't be enough. Gather all the mystic cultivators who can move. I want mystic cultivators level 5 and above. Arbor glanced indifferently at City Lord Lin. Don't worry. Emil Yen raised her hand and patted City Lord Lin's shoulder. The Marquis of Stability has already rushed over with his men. In addition, Commander Huey's men should be arriving soon. We just need to hold on for a while longer. Before they come, we have to defend. Lin Yongyi was overjoyed. He wiped his sweat and nodded repeatedly. Good, good. Then this subordinate will immediately summon mystic cultivators level 5 and above. Not good, City Lord. There's a hole in the city gate. Zombies are jumping in from the outside. Why are you still talking nonsense? Hurry up and put on your armor to protect yourself. Have the body cultivators quickly gather at the city gate tower. City Lord Lin was so anxious that his forehead was drenched in sweat, and he rushed down the city gate tower with his men. Seeing that City Lord Lin didn't have the time to summon the mystic cultivators, Arbor walked up and said calmly, Mystic cultivators level 5 and above who can still crawl. Get up and gather here. Those who were lying on the edge of the city wall, those who were half lying on the ground gasping for breath, those who were holding onto their swords, and those who were holding onto their sabers. All of them slowly crawled over from where they were standing and staggered to their feet. There were less than 100 mystic cultivators level 5 and above, who could crawl and stand up. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.